Hasn't been much of a day yet for me.
Well, Danya, as difficult as it was, I'm proud of you because you really did everything you could.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what to compare this to when you open up your stream and like nothing is set up again. I don't know. It's like you. I thought I printed out my essay, but my dog ate my. It actually ate my printer. It didn't even eat my homework. It just simply ate the printer itself.
Yeah, it seems like 2 days in a row we've had little issues, but I'm glad it's resolved. And truth be told, it seems like we didn't miss all that much. So we're here now. Everybody, let us know if you can hear us, you can see us. I'm looking in the chat. Oh, I'm gonna do that thing where we share the chat. I forgot about that part. Let's see if that
Oh yeah.
can go. Let's try that.
We also,
Oh,
I'm mostly me. I'm learning as I go. We're learning as we go. It's just one of those things. You learn where the pitfalls tend to be and how to do all of this and how to run the entire show on your own.
indeed, but
You
we're
want
doing
to
our best.
elaborate?
And oh, it worked. Great. Some things work day to day, but Danya, I guess we should set the scene for everybody, and also thanks everybody for being here. I see people, happy that we're live. But what I was going to say, Danya, is that this game is between Hikaru Nakamura, was the white pieces against Gukesh Damaraju, the world champion. Gukesh has won 2 games in a row in classical chess, 2 games where he was not just on the back foot, but pretty much dead in the water against Magnus and still survived and won. Then was much worse against Arjun, but that wasn't quite as clear and won that game as well. But this game, Danya, it looks like Hikaru is trying to give zero chances to Gukesh. He's played a very forcing line and well-known opening. And if I'm not mistaken, this is Fabiano, or sorry, Nepomniachtchi versus Fabiano from the candidates in 2020. What year is that? Two.
Yeah, 1893. And when Pyotr Ilyich Tchaikovsky visited the playing hall. And I don't know where that came from. I thought you were actually. I thought you were going to say from the currently ongoing title Tuesday. The games have already been put into the database.
Well, I was wrong in my year. It was 2024. It's the most recent
Yeah,
candidate tournament,
Robert.
but
It was
my bad.
2024.
Jan and Fabiano are in every single
I
candidates for the
know.
last few cycles, so it's I'm
Unbelievable.
mixing them up.
And they
But they
always
actually
draw.
had they do, although Fabio was winning, are much better with black that one game and allowed Jan to escape. But when he had black in this position, he played bishop to g6. So we do have predecessors in this variation. And thank you, Rank Wise, to see that sub there. Thank you, everybody who's been tuning in each and every day and supporting us.
Well, we do have predecessors. I don't know how great they are. And I don't know how much Gary would like this position. I'm running this in chess base. Just give me a second. Rook b1, 35 games. Bishop c5, king h1, 33 games. Queen e5 main line, 26 games. Rook e1, second most popular. Sorry, and I get a lot of doubles in my mega base. So I'm going to have to take it to the doubles, not the CA. I'm going to have to take it to the cleaners. King h8 and queen e2. Okay, so apart from Nepomniachtchi Caruana, that is actually not the first game to reach this position. The first game to reach this position was Paravian versus Sigurov, Blitz 2022. Then Paravian got this in Title Tuesday against an FM and lost with white in 2022. Then in 2023 in Charlotte, Vishnu Vanapali versus Ryan Ambergy. I know both of those people. Ooh. Whoa.
What happened?
Rook AE8 was
Oh,
played in that game, which is
I'm
a
saying woo
blunder.
because I didn't know what happened, but Danya, a bunch of subs being gifted by JMPY. Appreciate you so much.
Aw.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much, Jumpy. Jumpy Dev. Well, formerly Jumpy Dev. Now JMP191. I'm getting a lot of love yesterday, today, and I think I know who it's because of and who I'm collaborating with. It's crazy that I was just showing this concept yesterday based on a classical game where this happened. I can't believe this. Can I put this on the board? Rook AE8. This is a blunder. I think it's a blunder.
Is it? Oh, knight g6 check and 2 rooks on the back rank will lead to mate.
It's the Alekhine Colley idea. H takes g6. Let's say to illustrate queen takes e8 suddenly out of nowhere. And yeah, you get 2 rooks for the queen, but it seems like, the king can easily escape. I think the point is you go here, threatening mate, king h6, and h4 at the end, taking away the escape square, and checkmate is unstoppable.
Wow, it's always fun, Daniel, when these forcing variations, and it will end with checkmate, but it ends with a pawn push. It's like just this quiet little move, not just creating luck for the white king, but stopping the black king from escaping. It's such a beautiful sequence.
And that is what I would reference the Kamsky Polgar game to show that con. So I have two detours to show people when the time
Let's
is right.
go.
But just really quickly, in the black actually drew the game with bishop takes g6, and after queen takes e8, there is one more detail. If bishop takes d3, white simply plays c takes d3, and black, the lesser evil, I guess, is queen takes d3. But you know what the best move is here? Queen to b8, according
That's
to the computer.
ridiculous.
That is a collinear move in the other direction.
That's just a you get banned online move.
Just from that one move, yeah. I don't know if I speak that language very well, but this one I think we can make an exception. Vishnu played queen b5, and actually black was able to hold the position, which is insane.
So I guess in some endgames, the black bishop sits on b6, and it's actually very hard to break that position down with the bishop protected by and protecting both pawns on the queen side, and then the king side being pretty well defended itself.
Oh, to be honest, if I played this level of preparation, my opponent fell into this beautiful trap, and I still was not able to win. I'd probably break down in tears. After not breaking down this position. This is obviously prep by Hikaru Nakamura. The good news for Gukesh is that if he sidesteps this trap, which for a grandmaster is, I'm not going to say basic. I mean, it's missable, but given how long he's been thinking for, it tells us two things. The first is he understands the danger. He understands that this is not some sort of basic elementary position. Conversely, it tells us that Gukesh is out of his preparation, which increases the chance that something cataclysmic may happen.
Well, let's remember the World Championship. Gukesh never wanted to make a draw. Against Ding Liren, every time there was an opportunity to repeat moves, he said, no, let's play on. I want to keep going. So the game between, I have it up, or I just did have it up. I don't know where it went now. Oh, that's unfortunate. I had the game between Jan and Fabi. Give me 1 second to bring I have it.
I have it up as well. Okay, go ahead.
Well, I was going to take us through that game a little bit, where black played bishop g6. Jan took with the knight on g6, and we immediately had opposite colored bishops on the queen trade. So Jan was just liquidating in that contest, but knight takes g6 check isn't even forced, right? Can't white take on g6 instead at the start with the bishop and leave the knight on e7 and play for, what's that mate called on the h-file with the knight on e7?
Anastasia's mate?
Yeah, Anastasia's mate. Like h takes g6, queen e4. You're not going to see my threat, and I'm going to go meet you.
Yeah, I'm going to go rook a to b8, fighting for control of the crucial file. I'm going to develop chess dyslexia for just a second. But, all seriousness, queen takes c7, I think it's a good example of the kind of move, I guess, that would qualify as success for white, even though my instinct is that this endgame should still be a draw. Like, there's no way black is just, lost here. But it's a little bit annoying. Like, the other rook is coming to b7. I'm sure that black would need a little bit of accuracy here to hold the position. Let's check the computer. Yeah, it's like 0.2, right? After c5. Well, c5 allowing rook b7, and apparently this is just equal. Which makes no sense. Rook takes... Yeah, this is equal. This is still equal. This is still equal after rook e8. And don't ask me why. Oh, why? I understand. because what is black aiming for? Black is aiming for total liquidation of the queen side. At which point you're going to get like a 3-on-2. And as my coach taught me years ago, these two pawns act as kind of like a sponge. They sop up white's pawn majority, and they can both be defended by the king. So despite their outward visual ugliness, this is going to be impossible to win. Black is just going to exchange the c pawn for the a pawn, and it's going to be easily holdable position.
Yeah, it's like the best possible outcome for black there is holding a long endgame, and I think that these players at the highest level, they're capable of doing it, but they don't like to suffer and have to be on the defensive side. But Danya, that just goes to show that Hikaru's opening in this game isn't necessarily just let me make a quick draw, which is what I thought he was aiming for, as he probably thinks that he's got the advantage in Armageddon.
Nope. But that's Hikaru's winning chances there in the distance.
just going away with that ambulance, taken to the hospital. So bishop g6 is the one move. Rook a to e8 we saw does not work. So are there moves like rook a to b8? There are some ideas with white playing queen e4 anyway, which black will have to keep an eye out for, threatening checkmate. But how many decent moves does black have here? Because a number, at least to my eyes, look pretty appealing.
Yeah, I mean, bishop g6 is sort of in your pocket. I would also argue bishop to g6, bishop takes g6. There was the move f takes g6. Rook a to b8. Yeah, you're right. Also has been played, by the way. Rook a to b8, this move. No, sorry, it has not. Rook a to e8 has been played twice, and one of those times, God, David Paravian, imagine getting this position, all of this preparation. Your opponent plays rook e8, you're like celebrating, and you don't find knight g6 check. Like, you don't even know why you went into this line. What the point is, you play queen e4. And that is why David lost after g6. Wait, g4? I can see why he went for this, but he blundered the move. Okay, black played... Wait, knight is also hanging, but f5 is even stronger because white's position falls apart. If you take on f5, then the knight drops and black is not just up a piece, but checkmating you. And bishop f3 mate. Okay, I mean, this is frivolous, of course, but nevertheless, you have to know why you're playing a line. And this actually I see with newer players or younger players. They'll go into a line as rook a8 has been played by Gukesh, and they won't know like the main idea of the line. Like, why are you even playing this?
You just scared me because I heard rook a e8, but you said rook a b8, and I was looking off at something else. So I was like, there's no way he just blundered to checkmate this early. But rook a to b8 is not a blunder. It's a perfectly good move. We said that it's keeps the status quo more or less. But I guess Donnie, now it's up to Hikaru to prove whatever it is he was aiming for out of this opening. Are there some threats that he can create? Queen e4 threatens checkmate in one. That seems pretty obvious. Black can then step back with the bishop on g6. So is there a knight f5? Can that be a nuisance, threatening the queen, putting pressure on g7? I'm just trying to come up with something. And there may be some back rank ideas too. Like if rook trade on b8, watch out for a queen landing on e8 with a checkmate threat.
Well, Gukesh is going to watch out for that and not going to allow it. Also, if in fact Gukesh had played rook a8, you wouldn't have heard me calmly pronouncing the move. I would have been like screaming and refreshing frantically or like fainting, because that would be quite the occasion to raise the hype level. This really isn't. I mean, Gukesh with filigree precision as usual. This is technically a novelty. It doesn't even really matter if it's his preparation or not. I think what does matter is that liquidation and a draw, I'm going to give that like a 98% likelihood. And Hikaru he knows that this is the likeliest possibility from playing this line. He knows that the likeliest possibility was Gukesh knows it. So he's mitigating his risk to the extreme.
Right, because I mean Hikaru, he's just trying to liquidate and just come up with a few threats, and if Gukesh parries them, the game is equal. But like, let's say the rooks trade on b8 right now, and white plays knight to f5. Already there are numerous threats that black has to deal with. The queen is under attack on d6. That's the most obvious one with the knight retreat. But queen e8 back rank check and mate is scary to deal with. If you allow it, the queen to e5 as you're drawing arrows about. So it's not that easy for black to actually deal with all of those threats at once. I'm guessing queen e6 allows black to liquidate into a reasonable ending.
That is a nasty. That is a Russian schoolboy move right there. Queen e6. Please take queen.
I just didn't see any other options, Danya, because if you move your queen to a different square, queen c6 runs into bishop to b5, this? Maybe?
Queen f8? Queen e5 also queen F8? Nasty, yeah?
Exactly, and your bishop on h5 is loose.
And the pawn on c7, and this bishop, actually, knight takes g7, deflects the queen from both bishops. Well, no, this bishop isn't even defended, sorry.
But still, nasty idea.
Nasty idea, asterisk, in like a blitz game, I think. I'm sorry to keep downplaying. I don't mean to be the grumpy uncle, like, this Super Bowl is going to be a boring game, and we're going to have a bad party. We're going to have a great party.
Like it. I enjoy it when you're the curmudgeonly commentator, and I get to be the upbeat one.
No, curmudgeon's a great word to describe Naroditsky before the hour of 7 p.m.
And then you become a gargoyle?
A gargoyle? No, what is this, the Notre Dame or something?
Well, you said after darkness is when you come alive, so I felt like it was a reasonable reference.
You want a funny story? So the
sure.
Notre Dame references to the Notre Dame in Paris, the cathedral.
You mean the Notre Dame?
The Notre Dame, yes. Yes, okay. Robert, the Notre Dame in the airport is called the Charles de Gaulle. Okay. And what you eat is macaron. Yeah, no, not President, it's Emmanuel Macron, it's macaron. And what is the second airport in Paris called? Do you know?
Orly.
Very good, very good. Can you name all of London's airports?
London's.
Stansted, Gatwick, City Airport, Luton, and Heathrow. Sorry, so...
Where is this coming from?
I don't know. I'm showing my French bona fides.
That's why I got confused because you said London, but in a French accent. So then I was thrown through a loop. Like, what are the other French airports that I don't know?
I'm not sure how to say London in French. It would be like, well, Londres in Spanish. It must be similar.
Let me think about that. I think it is the same, right?
Yeah, London, Luton. It's Londres, yeah. And I actually interacted with that because I did a lot of research on like Staunton versus Saint-Amand. Anyways, as an aside, when I visited Paris for the first time in 2005, after the World Youth that we had discussed on a previous commentary, the one that was in Belfort, my family and I visited the Notre Dame. And in Russian, Notre Dame is called let me translate it literally, like the Cathedral of the Parisian Godmother. Except the word for cathedral, which I didn't know at the time, is sabor, sabor, just like the Spanish word for flavor. What I did know was the Russian word for fence, which is zabor. You following?
Okay, yeah.
Sabor. So in the morning, I asked my mom, when are we going to see the fence of the Parisian Godmother? Zabor Paryski Bogomacheri. And that became an inside joke, like, for the rest of, to this day. Instead of cathedral, like I didn't know the word. I thought we were gonna see like a big like holy fence.
Well, I appreciate you welcoming everyone here into your little secret, your family secret. So now we're all a part of it.
We are all a part of it. You see what I did? Will we be a part of this handshake that will be happening in this game within the next 30 minutes?
Well, we're being told that Hikaru's been yapping for 3 minutes in the confessional. So speaking Classic of Notre Dame.
That's such typical Hikaru. Right. I can even tell you what he said without even checking what he said.
Well, we're Jumpy saying that Hikaru's happy to watch Arjun play with youthful energy and verve.
Okay, I'm going to put that game on and I'm going to give you an executive summary of Hikaru and what he said. Right. I mean, on the one side, I mean, this game could be thought of as a quick draw. I understand it's boring for the fans. You know, on the other hand, if you look at the other side of coin, I am an older player. I think I do like my chances in Armageddon. At the other hand, I can check the stock prices and I can check Arjun's game. So some people will be like Debbie Downers and pretend like I played for draw white. But on the other hand, I can't have fun, chill, and enjoy the game.
Oh my goodness. I can't keep up with all your accents, languages, references. You're just all over the map, and I mean that in a good way. And I guess my question for you, going back to the chess for a second,
please,
is the energetic Arjun, at least the way he's playing, feels like Fabi's also chosen quite a combative variation. So this is a dynamic now where white has the bishop pair, black has the knights. There's a c4 square that's a nice outpost. I said queen pawn, the d5 pawn. It helps anchor in a knight on c4 and helps protect that knight on e4. So what do you make of this position? Because black has a weakness in d5. White has a3 and c3 weaknesses in terms of pawns. The c4 square is vulnerable. The bishop on c1 can go to f4, but doesn't actually threaten anything, and black can play around it. What I'm trying to get at is this position holds a lot of life to it, and I guess my big question for you is, which side do you tend to prefer this setup from?
I've had more experience from the black side of this setup because as an alternative to the King's Indian, I did play the Rogozin almost full-time for a long stretch. When I say the Rogozin, what I mean is what happened in this game. So let's rewind a little bit. This started as a QGD. Knight f3, knight f6. Now here g3 would be the Catalan, but Arjun with knight to c3. Now bishop b7 would be the Queen's Gambit declined move. Knight b to d7 has been a lot of moves here. c5 is the semi-Tarrasch, but Fabi transposes to the Ragozin with bishop to b4. And a3 here is, I would say, a very uncommon move to my knowledge, Robert. And there's interesting sort of trends in the Ragozin where White will go into the main lines, which is c takes d5 and bishop g5. Then white will start trying sidelines, like bishop d2, bishop f4 was popular for a time, queen to c2, and a3. I'm not aware of the current trends, and I'm not aware of whether maybe this move has become popular lately. In any case, it sort of gives me, I think it's called the Kmok variation vibes. Like in the Nimzo-Indian, of course, there is a line where white plays a3 called the Kmok variation, named after Hans Kmok. And it speaks for itself, so I don't have to talk about it any further.
I thought you were going to call him Hans Kmok Niemann.
Oh my God. I haven't woken up yet fully, so we agreed to do less puns, but I can't help myself. I'm ridiculous. C5, CD. Now, e takes d5, I'm sure was possible, but that leads to kind of an annoying structure. Fabi preferred. Oh, sorry, he does play e takes d5. My inclination would be knight takes d5, but what do I know? E takes d5, g3. Also not the most conventional form of development in this type of position. Knight to e4, attacking white's weak backward pawn on c3. Arjun says, please take it. Suddenly, rook to e8. Now this becomes an even more serious threat. I assume, Robert, that knight takes c3 would have been met with queen to c2 with massive compensation here.
I think it's a very instructive variation because a lot of people see a pawn attack, they protect the pawn. But white is trying to gain an even greater lead in development. With the queen on c2, the c5 pawn would be in trouble. Of course, black can throw in c takes d4, but after white takes back on d4 with the knight, you've destabilized the main squares for black. Knight can go back to e4 successfully. That sounds good. But then the black knight doesn't get up to c6 because the white knight in the center and the white queen, they stare at that square. White will play bishop b2, rook to d1, rook to c1, and just take full control over this board. And I want to add, Danya, that without a c3 pawn, bishops and rooks are happy now. But with the presence of the c3 pawn in the game, white's pieces are more restricted. So I know oftentimes we want to just grab a pawn if it's available, but when we take pieces, we free up diagonals and we free up files. So just keep that in the back of your mind.
But rook e8 actually creates the threat of knight takes e3 because the follow-up to that will be knight takes e2 check, and two pawns, way too much of a price to pay. So it was time for Arjun to bring his queen out and defend the pawn. Bishop to f5 in these types of positions is often met with knight h4. So this is another one of those super tempting moves that doesn't turn out to do much, and then white can start undermining this knight. So instead, knight takes d4. So I see. When I think a player will take back with the knight, they take back with the pawn. When I think a player will take back with the pawn, they take back with the knight. Man, it reminds me of this Russian anecdote that's so tempting, but I won't share it. Knight to c6 because we have a position to talk about. Rook to d1. Knight to a5, clamping down on the c4 square, making sure that white isn't able to push c4, which would lead to Armageddon in the center, but not in this game. Rook to b1 and bishop to d7, finally completing the minor piece development, clearly hinting at rook c8. I mean, that is clearly what Fabi wants to play on the next move, unless we see something unexpected from Arjun. I feel like this is both tactical and positional at the same time. I am concerned strategically for white. If you look at these pawns, Robert, we talked about a line where the c3 pawn was sacrificed, but it can't just be given up in any position, right? If black takes it and forks the rooks, it's going to be trouble. And I'm not sure that you want a bishop just sitting on b2 like that, with its only purpose being the manservant to this pawn on c3. So, what's your take here? And I'm going to go make some coffee if that's okay. I'll be right back. I'll try to make it as quicker than usual.
Perfectly okay. So enjoy the coffee, get that brewing. And everybody, now that Danya's leaving, you know exactly what to do. Danya worked really hard today because somehow the Streamlabs wasn't cooperating, and that's why we were late. And Danya was a magician getting everything to work. So we do have to shout him out and give thanks. And I see you in the YouTube channel. You're very welcome, everybody. And I see you coming for some anecdotes and all of that stuff. I see you all. You guys are funny in chat right now. But what I was going to say about this position is that Danya was spot on. That if white dilly-dallies, just plays moves that are a bit toothless, black has clear plans against the white position. A rook coming to c8 would put pressure on that c3 pawn, which is quite weak, and there's already the knight on e4, a very active piece. And why white took with the knight on d4 a few turns ago is you are cementing this isolated queen pawn for black in place. But more importantly, once that knight moves, the rook on d1 will put pressure down the center. But for now, I don't think white has completed the development and can use the knight on d4 just yet. And so white's probably best suited to develop the dark square bishop, but then black will play moves like rook c8, pawn to a6 to take away any knight jumps from white. And I just think that black's pieces have healthy squares. And I don't exactly know what the plan is going to be from the white side. Thank you, everybody. I see all your kind words for Danya. You're very welcome, everyone. I gave you the real reason for the delay. I wasn't lying to you. I could just say, "Oh, we're our own bosses and we just choose what time we start." But we want to be on time. And yesterday we had a similar problem. So there's nothing that I'm saying that isn't true. Well, unless I'm making mistakes on my analysis, in which case I was intending to be truthful, and I am human and I make mistakes. But in this position, I think that it is clear that while Arjun has way more time, an extra 30 minutes on the clock, it does feel like it's just easier to play for black for the time being. You have completed your minor piece development, which Danya pointed out. A rook is coming to c8, the black queen can slide out to f6, and you're just going to put pressure on this lonely c3 pawn. So I am liking this from the black side, and I think that Arjun needs to be careful, and that's why he's finally slowing down, trying to figure out his turn here because it's not an easy position whatsoever. I'm just not seeing a plan. That's my issue. Is from the white side, I really would like to move the knight away from d4, and when Donnie gets back, we'll draw arrows and things like that. But knight to b3, trying to trade off black's active knight, that walks right into a pin. The last one, bishop d7, allows that bishop to go to a4 in the near future, and that would be a nuisance to deal with. Oh, Frank Rutton, thank you. I see that sub, Danya. I know he appreciates it, even though he's not sitting in this chair. And Arjun's preparation didn't work out the way he wanted. I'm not sure if what Arjun really had mapped out here. Fabiano plays so many different variations from the black side that he may not have prepared for this exact continuation today. And I see you asking, what about knight to b5? And I was sitting on that. It looks like a very good move, but I think it has a very clear drawback. So when Danya gets back, we will talk about the move knight to b5. But I'll just say the move that black will respond with. I think bishop f5 is a massive problem for white to deal with. There's a queen in line with the bishop. Behind that queen is a rook. And previously that knight was jumping to h4, but the knight can't teleport over there. And if the bishop got to f5, you could slide back to g6 and create serious issues for white on the diagonal. So rook b4 played. I really like that move, and I think Danya will like it as well. It's unorthodox. It was unexpected for me. I didn't mention it, but this move rook to b4, and I see you, Danya. I see you there. But rook to b4 allows white to play knight to b3 next to put pressure on d5 and b7.
Breaking news alert. Hikaru, Gukesh make a mistake? What? This better be true.
Wow.
I'm sorry to cut you off. I heard every word you were saying through my headphones. I also was monitoring the chat on my phone.
There was a legitimate mistake here by Gukesh. If he'll have to pay the price for it, remains to be seen because of the nature of this position, Danya. I mean, it's opposite colored bishops. White has a healthier pawn structure. Black's king may be in some long-term danger, but I guess white also needs a plan.
Yeah, if we turn off the colors on the moves, right? Because there was a day and an age when you would just see the moves piping in, and then would pipe in hot, just like my coffee, momentarily. But, okay, so first of all, no material has been lost. Okay, fact one. Fact two, I look at this and I don't see the eval board nor the engine. I don't understand why black is... Okay, I would obviously prefer white here, as would anybody watching this, right, Robert? I mean, white's pawn structure is better. White's heavy piece coordination is better. We know, and we often say that in middle games with opposite colored bishops, it favors the attacker unless the position is like completely locked up. But with all of that being said, how extensive can white's advantage be here? What am I sort of missing? Where am I underestimating the danger?
Well, black doesn't have a plan. So you can't leave the rook off the eighth rank because then black is back rank checkmated in many positions. The bishop on c5 can't attack anything, and we talked about an attack with bishops opposite color. The white queen and bishop line up, so in the near future, h4 followed by h5 is a pretty serious threat that black's gonna have to deal with. And in fact, white can play king g2, pawn to h4, and then line up pawn to h5. And I'm not really seeing how Gukesh plans to meet all that.
Where was the actual inaccuracy? I wouldn't call this a big mistake. Let's not overstate the case. So this position, right? We saw the move rook to b8. Here we left. Hikaru played queen e4, bishop to g6. Okay, exclam. Yeah, he was. What did you think he would do? Miss mate in one. Bishop to g6, knight takes g6, sure. And here all three captures are on the table. Like queen takes g6, h takes g6, and f takes g6. All of these moves like have to be seriously considered. And he took away from the center. He took in such a way as to make sure that his king is surrounded by the most like. I mean, it's like in a nuclear bunker, that king on it. It's in New Zealand somewhere.
Well, Danya, I think queen g6 failed to rook takes b8, rook takes b8, queen e8 check, if I'm not.
Like I said, Robert, all two captures are on the table. Queen takes g6 is off the table because of this line. Yes. I didn't see that at
all. And it's important to note that black could have taken the queen on e4, but rook takes f8 check as an intermezzo, and white goes a rook ahead.
Hey, it's like 1984. I'm distorting the narrative every 2 minutes. No, I always said that. Oceania has always been at war with Europa or whatever. F takes g6. So that leaves us, I assume, with h takes g6. Why do you think that he shied away from this move? Is it because of the prospect of like a check on h4? Is it because of like h4, h5 being annoying?
I'm not sure, Winston. I need to figure it out. Give me a second to.
Dang.
I don't know why he didn't take with the h pawn. I'm actually struggling to figure that out.
I think we need to put him in room 43.
Oh, it's going to be all sorts of literary references today. But
Oh yeah.
Danya, I think that the old school books tell us to capture towards the center, not away from it. So f takes g6, it just feels wrong. Like, I think we can, even if you say we shouldn't overstate the case, I actually am going to be critical. Like, I don't fully understand unless there's a tactic here that I'm just missing, and I will own that after hg6 if there's something that white can do. Like, why would you take with the f pawn?
Yeah, like you're kind of asking for trouble. I agree with you. Like h takes g6. Okay, you're allowing one check. Okay, but yeah, you are supposed to take toward the center for a reason. And f takes g6. It's not like it doesn't create targets for white to attack. h4, h5 becomes an even more nasty proposition here. You're pointing out, Robert, like the idea of g3, king g2, which Hikaru is implementing after the initial rook trade. At that point, h4 becomes like potentially unstoppable. Like you could get us if white plays king g2 in this position, there is a reality in which black literally cannot prevent the pawn from reaching h5. And if it does, black is in serious doo-doo. So is it a fair statement that this is actually like Hikaru knows all about farming? Speaking of literary references, is Hikaru going to be farming Gukesh here after king g2 and h4? What does black do to meet that plan?
I'm really trying. I've been locked in. I'm trying to calculate here. I think black's in huge trouble.
Wow.
Yeah, we saw this game yesterday between Fabiano and Wei Yi. At first, it looked like, okay, black should hold. We can see the evaluation next to the live board where black is only slightly worse. But what's black's plan? Like h4, h5 is coming. There's the back rank checkmate ideas that you're highlighting. And what would black want to do? Queen d4, some kind of queen trade.
Whoops.
Well, tell me.
Yeah, this would be rather catastrophic because if the rook were on a defended square, you'd be able to play bishop f8, but you can't put the rook on a defended square. I mean, maybe you can play rook d8 actually. Maybe that's not such a stupid move. Let's say I start with rook d8, intending queen d4. What's your move?
Yeah, I mean, king g2. I'm just going to continue like
Queen
my
d4?
plan. It seems very straightforward. Queen d4, I'll queen e8 check.
Bishop f8 is forced.
Okay, queen f7.
Gosh darn it. And if I play queen to d7, I assume you're going to transform your advantage and trade and go rook e8?
I thought that was just winning, but maybe you can go rook f7, rook f6 somehow.
I can pretend to defend, but no, that's horrible endgame. That would be like the worst case scenario. And if I play queen f6, then this falls.
Yeah, just start
Oh
taking
my
pawns.
gosh. So I would like subdivide black's position into three separate problems. Taken together, these problems become like overwhelming, and they're all kind of below the surface. You don't see them when you cast a quick glance at the position. The first is the not the presence of this check on e8. It's the fact that it constantly black has to deal with it, and black can't make luft. Right? The reason black can't make luft is because you can't play h6. You're going to drop the g pawn. So that's problem one. Problem two, of course, is the pawn on c7. White's bishop is anchored to the c2 pawn. Black can't attack it. White, of course, can attack the c7 pawn. We just saw a line in which it falls. Problem three is the presence of a clear plan of improvement for white, which is king g2 and h4. Black has no such equivalent plan. Taken together, I'm just amazed at how the more you look at this position, the nastier it becomes for black. Gukesh has been staring at it for what, like 20 minutes now? 25 minutes?
He should be thinking long and hard about his decisions, but I think it's actually past the point. I mean, Donnie, can we just go back
Plus
again? I don't
two
want to.
by Sese? Whoa.
I don't want to be overly critical. We
Please,
try to
be
be
critical.
fair to the players. No, I mean we try to be fair to the players. But what can you come up with an idea that made h6 g6 scary? Like I just need to figure out like what Gukesh was afraid of, because under normal circumstances, if he were playing a bullet game, he would play h6 g6, no problem. So what was he worried about in today's game?
Well, if he was playing a bullet game, not something that Gukesh typically engages in. But your point is well taken. He took 2 minutes and 8 seconds on this move. Not a lot of time. So it's not like he autopiloted it, but it's also not the kind of time that you would normally spend deciding between two, let's say, similar looking moves. So I think likely if somebody put a knife to my throat and was like, okay, you have to say a reason, maybe he didn't want to allow this extra check on h4, and he felt that somehow with the rook getting to d1, black would get put under pressure in the center. But I'm also not trying to dumb it down and pretend like he's, was born yesterday. Actually, he was born 3 days ago because that was his birthday.
Yeah, he just celebrated a birthday over there. So I'm shifting my chair because I felt stuck in the rug there.
Well, Gukesh is stuck with his wheels in the mud. But I'm with you, Robert. I mean, I initially was skeptical about the extent of White's advantage. But the fact that we're even talking about an advantage it's just crazy. Gukesh is, I mean, he's made some real head scratchers this tournament, and this takes nothing away from the last 2 rounds. I mean, that is like, when the narrative of this tournament will be written, no matter where he finishes in the tournament, Robert, that will be a separate chapter in and of itself. Like the 2 comebacks side to side, back to back.
Yeah. I mean, they were incredible, and we had the privilege of watching them, and we had the privilege of trying to translate what was happening for you. And sometimes it was indecipherable. It was like, well, what's going on? Why is this happening? And then the opponent makes a mistake in response. But I think, Danya, this game here, f takes g6, like I'm struggling to wrap my head around that decision because it's created clear problems for him. And I remember covering some of Jan Nepomniachtchi's games where he would make very quick decisions, and then his position would soon be on the verge of collapsing. And for Gukesh, taking on g6 was such a committal decision. You can't take that back. Your pawn structure is going to be doubled no matter which way you captured. But taking away from the center, leaving your king stuck on the last rank, you can't create a luft because g6 falls. And Danya, sometimes in these positions, right, you give away the g6 pawn to try to liquidate, go opposite colored bishops. But if you played h6 and queen takes g6 happens, you're still getting back rank checkmated if your rook ever leaves. So you're just stuck.
And actually, I'm running Chessify because I didn't believe Sesi, but now I'm running Stockfish at a high depth, and it's the higher the depth goes, the worse the evaluation. It started as +1. Now it's at +1.6. And as the depth climbs closer to depth 40, it's getting close to +2. The best move is it's some sort of gibberish. It's Stockfish gibberish. Queen b6, king g2, queen b4. Wow. And White's best move there is just to ignore the queen trade and play h4, which is insane. So even if the queens are traded and White maintains the assets of his position, apparently the endgame is still really bad.
And I think I can explain that if you want to put that on the board. So Black is so stuck in place that even without the queens on the board, right, that exact variation you were talking about, rook takes e4, you would like to bring your king to f8 to help out and play in the center, but king g8 is met by bishop c4 check, and king f8 is then met by rook f4. And I'm going to keep chasing your king, and my rook is going to land on f7, and c7 and g7 are both under attack, and black is just in a world of hurt.
Yeah. Lich. Or paralysis in English. Complete paralysis. It's just, I mean, Nimzovich talked about this at length. Like, this concept of paralysis. I think he was like obsessed with it in chess. Like, well, fortunately not in like real life. But when you can put your opponent in a bind like this, you only start to appreciate it when you try to make a move. And that's why I use this phrase sometimes in lessons, like blah, 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 equal, I can hold, make a move. Okay, make a move, make another move. I have a plan. What do you have? A terrible position. And some bad puns.
I'm just trying to figure it out. I feel lost for words because this position is really bad for black, and now Gukesh is down 40 minutes on the clock. He's spending his time just trying to figure out a single turn here because of the back rank, because of the pressure on his king g2, h4, h5. And that's the worst part, Danya, is black may have like one plan that we found, queen b6 to b4, and white's plan is automatic. You can still do that even when a queen trade is on the table, and that means that practically speaking, black is close to lost.
It's unbelievable, and it's just a crazy decision by Gukesh. One he's probably also busy excoriating himself about. Robert, how many times in our classical careers do you recognize that a mistake has been made? You know exactly where you made it. And the longer you think, the more you start digging into yourself. Why didn't I take longer? Why didn't I spend time evaluating this position? I had over an hour, right? And the cruelty of classical chess is that you have all the time in the world to ponder the the consequences of your mistakes. But in the moment, you always seem to act too fast. You never seem to use that time wisely. Unless you're Robert Hess. You tended to use all of your time.
Very early in the game, yes. All my time is gone. And then I can blame my losses on the fact that I didn't have enough time remaining. So it's not the fact that I spent the time. It's just that there just wasn't enough. And so it's not my fault. But, Danya,
Okay,
white's play is so automatic. Okay, rook f8, just trying to get active here, trying to put pressure on the f3 pawn. King g2, right? White can make this move very quickly.
And he will.
It's obvious. And then he's going to play h4, almost pre-movable.
And he will.
And look, that question mark that was just given, I didn't even see the evaluation bar change. So why is that given a question mark? Maybe just, it's going to show that the position's going to get with a greater and greater advantage for white once the depth clears up and once the position moves on.
Yeah, if you're using the chess.com engine, sometimes like the right leg doesn't know what the left leg is doing. Like the question mark reflects the evaluation at one depth, but when you look at the actual engine line, the depth is like rising and the eval is slightly going up and down. So this is why it's so important to have let's say a wider understanding of what's going on. If you're like, oh, it went from 1.4 to 1.6, this is the deciding moment. It actually went from like 1.4 to 1.8 at depth 40, which I'm looking at right now on the big boy Stockfish. No, it's king g2. The best move is more computer gibberish. Queen d8, h4, queen a8. And then white's best move is a4. White's best move is h4, and the second best move is a4. This is after king g2, queen d8, by the way, what I'm talking about. Now it's +2. Dude, it just keeps going up. It's ridiculous.
I accidentally muted myself. Sorry. H4 is... king g2, h4 is automatic, and white has full control of this e file. The b file was where the black rook was. That was fully open, but you couldn't actually do anything over there. So, yeah, I think Hikaru can just play king g2, no matter what Gukesh does, as long as it's not queen d4. But is that what he's setting up, Danya? Is that what Hikaru is calculating right now? That if king g2, queen d4, what's next?
If king g2, queen d4, that is a good question. What is next?
Can you trade and play rook e7? Like, is that still... It looks really good for white, but I'm not sure if it's winning.
It is, and I would argue that I think Gukesh will likely essentially acquiesce to one of these queen trades. By the way, look at Hikaru's clock. He's got almost the full complement of time, 2 hours to, tighten the screws and just like to bring the drill and really tighten both the screws and the noose in this position. But after king to g2, if we put this on the board, queen to d4, trade, we're going to get something like this in the game. That's my prediction. And the question will be, can Hikaru bring this all the way home? Or can Gukesh find some sort of last stand?
So let's say you play bishop b6 to defend these pawns. H4 comes, then f4. Then the white king can run wherever it wants to. Black can't move.
Yeah. This is ridiculous. Like h4, f4. We talked about an endgame like this in Caruana Wei, but that was completely different. That was losing because of the pawn weaknesses. This position is losing because black has insufficient circulation in his limbs. And I'm not talking about the former World Blitz champion like Wang Lim. I'm talking about the king not being able to join the game, the rook being tied to the 8th rank. You can't make Luft to free up the rook. Enough. Disgusting. Bad.
And I think we can do a comparison if you want to bring up on one of the boards, the Wei Yi versus Magnus game, because that also has opposite colored bishops, and that game is 2 rooks per side. But you will notice some very key differences, and I see you bringing it up, so thank you for that, Danya.
On the small board.
But the difference there is that both kings have access into the heart of the position, into the center, and unlike in the Gukesh's position, the king is stuck in the corner, not getting out. Both Magnus and Wei Yi can have active kings, and then can create plans of their own. And it looks like Hikaru has, in fact, played king g2.
Okay, Magnus Wei Yi game. Can we do like the news channels do the projection of who wins the state? Can we project a draw in that game? Like the Hess Naroditsky official projection is a draw?
I am just going to quickly look to see if there are any weak points or plans that I'm overlooking, and I don't see it because black can put a rook on d5, a rook on e8, or d8, and it seems like just black has just as much control as white does, and there's no weak pawns to exploit. Because one thing to note, Danya, in that Magnus game, that the c7 pawn, even if it's captured, that white is going to be left with these doubled c pawns, so it's not like you can create an easy pass pawn. So it's important to keep that in the back of our minds, that in the event c2 or c7 drop, it's not the end of the world for the side losing a pawn.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I elect to change this game because I think the intrigue will be on the Hikaru board. Of course, Fabiano's game is also heating up in a big way. We can update people on that one maybe very quickly. What do you think? I know the Hikaru game is the one where everyone's discussing and the buzz is happening, but we might get very interesting things afoot in Fabiano's game because f2 is threatened. I've pulled that up on the small board for now. Can I also put it up on the analysis board for just a second?
Let's do it. I'll keep an eye, and I'm sure chat will keep an eye on the Hikaru game against Gukesh. But why don't we take a peek at this game, because you mentioned the f2 pawn is hanging, so bishop e3 would be my automatic response for white. Is there any universe where you take this knight on e4, or is that going to expose the white king in a pretty bad way?
No, I mean, it's bishop takes c4 is not a move that you play if you're not it's not a move that you play with a smile on your face unless you're like a masochist. But it's also not a move that you play and then, write your last will and testament, because okay, let's say bishop takes c4 happens. Black, I assume, plays d takes c4 to eliminate his isolated pawn. Bishop e3 has been played. Great call, Robert. But what I wanted to say is that it's not like black can land a queen on f3 that easily. So you'll have to keep an eye on your king. But this was definitely a viable option for Arjun. Instead, you cannot blame him for wanting to keep his bishop pair. My first question is, knight to c4. Robert, is there anything wrong with this move tactically?
Well, let's think about it for a second, and I'm going to answer your question. Thank you for teeing me up. With a note that the d5 pawn is overloaded. The queen and bishop, they attack the e4 knight, and that d5 pawn and the rook on e8 protect it. So if you look at this position, I think rook takes c4 first is the correct move order. And then after the rook takes knight, black takes that rook, and then the second knight falls in the center. So it's 2 minor pieces for a rook.
See, now you know how I felt in college. Okay, either you write my History 101 paper, or I write my other paper, or I get some sleep, but not all three. And you end up getting nothing. You get an F in both classes and no sleep.
I was going to say you chose none of the above. You chose some other form of entertainment.
Absolutely. We will not be entertained with a blunder here by Fabiano. How is he going to maintain his grip on the position? Rook ac8 is a Title Tuesday move. Is there something deeper?
So is there a drawback to rook a to c8? Because at some point I feel like white has to take this knight on e4, otherwise you just drop this c3 pawn.
Yeah. And maybe Arjun is inviting rook c8 and saying, well, that's a better version. Like, I still have to give up my g2 bishop, but at least I've gotten my other bishop out and sort of stabilized my central control. Okay, so,
And
yeah, what do you
the
see?
a7 pawn is hanging in some positions as well. So I agree with you that even though the rook develops, now white may have some kind of initiative brewing, but I just don't know how to make it work.
Maybe takes, and if black takes with a pawn, maybe knight b5 anyway. Just, I understand bishop b5, rook c3, but then queen can slide to a4, and suddenly black's queen side is under a lot of fire. The rook on e8 will be x-rayed. No, I don't like that for black. Also, rook takes e4. Or sorry, no, never mind. Scratch that.
I got so confused with the arrows and the ideas, but I get your essential point that c3 may drop, but there will be tactics with bishop d4 in
Yeah,
some
yeah. This
positions. The
this
knight
this is what
a5
I'm
is
talking
loose.
about. Queen a4.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Too much is hanging.
so after bishop takes e4, is Fabi going to take back with a rook in your opinion, Robert, or is there something against knight b5 that I'm missing?
I think you've answered this by showing us some nice tactics that in the starting position, rook c8 may be put on delay for pawn to b6 because rook c8 is more direct, threatening c3, but as you just showed, there might be some pieces hanging. So what's wrong with starting with b6 first? And knight b5 is definitely not scary because c3 is going to fall.
Well, c4 has to be calculated, trying to obviously like initiate that tactical sequence, but c4 is very strongly met by rook a c8, and then the c4 pawn will be picked off without. That's like getting an extension on your paper. You know, that pawn on d5 will no longer be overloaded, which I never had the guts to ask for. And
That doesn't surprise me at all,
well,
even though I'm sure your professors would have given it to you.
I'm glad I didn't get an extension in my college career because that allowed me to experience the joys of commentating with GM Hess.
Wow, look at him. What a flatterer.
And on that note,
Oh my.
I'm grabbing my coffee.
Okay,
I
but
can
while
smell
you do
it.
that,
Early morning coffee, yes.
what? No, just go. I need to finish my thought while you're not here.
Okay.
Okay, so while Danya does that, everybody knows what to do again. And Danya steps aside. We talk about chess and definitely nothing else. Definitely not listening, says Tayeb. Exactly. I'm looking at the YouTube chat right now. Wei Yi with 99.6 accuracy, Magnus with 99. That game, see, accuracy can be somewhat misleading in terms of people equating it with strength. Because if you play a variation where pieces just come off the board, you have a very accurate game, but that doesn't mean it was all that impressive. And I don't think Wei Yi or Magnus are looking at the game thinking that they're in for a masterpiece. And I see all the kind words. You're welcome, Pharaoh. Perseverance. Thank you for staying with us. And I see that people are saying Danya helped them with the repertoire. Yeah, Danya's awesome, and he knows it. Well, he knows I think that. I don't know if he knows himself. He's a pretty modest guy. Anyway, this position here, I feel like it's a mixed bag where the knight on e4 is strong but can be captured. The rook on b4 is pretty well placed. Your 8-move, 97% accuracy bullet game is not a masterpiece. Sorry. Didn't mean to let you down. Yeah, people are chill today. But this day also feels chill overall with the types of games that we're seeing. It seems like the players, it took a calm approach. Wei Yi and Magnus, that's very equal. This game that we have on the screen, it's the messiest of the bunch. And then Hikaru's game is very one-sided. And Gukesh is now down under an hour. And Danya, I see that you're back. I'm happy that you have your coffee, your caffeine and all.
Oh yeah.
And people were being very kind to you while you were gone.
Thank you. I think I know what they were doing and what GM Hess was encouraging them to do to me. They do that a lot for some reason. This complimenting thing. I don't know why that seems to be like a part-time job or a full-time job for some people. But thank you. You know who's not chill? Gukesh, because one of the worst sensations is playing someone like Hikaru, who's a technician. Like, his technique is amazing. You have 0 winning chances, so you can only lose or draw if maybe it's a miracle, and your opponent has like an hour, 45 minutes. Been there. Absolutely been there.
I have nothing to argue with that statement. And actually, you mentioned Hikaru and being a technician, so this is a perfect time, if you don't mind, bring up the Anamuzachuk against Lei Ting-J game. And I have a specific reason for it because I saw the pawn structure, and it reminded me of, if I'm not mistaken, I don't remember the year, Nakamura versus Caruana, and it was the Singfield Cup. I was commentating. I can't remember the year that it was, but the opening is from that game.
Yes, I think it's 1976. Yes. No, Rex Singfield was like 10, no, like 20, 30, 40 years old. So we could have had a Singfield Cup.
No, more recent than that, the players all descend upon St. Louis for top level chess in the Grand Chess Tour. But okay, not the current position, but if you go to the opening.
Cup.
Yeah, if you go to the opening, Daniel, I just wanted to quickly zoom through that because there's a temporary piece sacrifice, then there's a temporary like rook en prise that's not capturable because tactics don't work out in Black's favor. But just this opening is one where there's sacrifices from both sides.
Yeah, Bishop E7. Now that is not a. Actually, I faced it. Who played some? There's somebody. I think Lazovic. Some grandmaster who always plays this against me in Blitz, and I never know what to do because yesterday I showed the open variation of the Ruy Lopez. It was in reference, Robert, to the Gukesh versus Arjun versus Gukesh game because remember when Arjun had a pawn on d3? And I was pointing out like b5, bishop b3, d5. This is called the open Ruy Lopez. Bishop e7 is a sideline, and it's based on a really, really lovely tactical idea. Rook to e1, b5, rook takes e4, and now d5. The reason that you don't play b takes a4 is because I assume White plays d5 with very nasty consequences. So Black starts with the intermezzo d5. White plays knight takes e5. This is all well-known theory. Oh, I know where I saw this. I saw this in the miniature Deshmukh versus Vaishali, where Vaishali messed up.
Yes.
Messed up the line. You know what I'm talking about.
Good memory by you. I know exactly what you're talking about.
India video.
Really good memory by you. That was from the Women's Grand Prix event. And this is all a forcing variation where at the end of it, White doesn't lose the rook, Black restores material equality, Black has a bishop pair but a worse pawn structure. And can you check since you have the database open? This is from a Hikaru Fabi game, right?
So I will give you the first game that was reached. The like stem game, I think it's called, the first game to reach a position. And I will also give you the year of the Fabi game. First game to reach the position, Bishop e7 was first played in 1864 by Falkbeer against Blackburn. Wow, I'm seeing some names here. I'm seeing some. Winauer played it.
Yasser was there for that game as well.
He was indeed. He was in the front row. Okay, b5. Carlson has played rook takes c4. d5. So the position after d5. Oh my gosh, you know who first played this? Dr. Zigbert Tarash in 1916 in a game against Emmanuel Masker. He was massacred in this match against Lasker, 5-0. And the next time it was played was 1976, exactly 60 years later. Unbelievable. How ahead of their time they were. Ivanchuk played it in 1986.
Wow.
Against Yuri Krupa.
In Tilburg?
In Irkutsk. USSR Championship 1986. Yes, the USSR Championship was held in Tilburg that year. Knight takes e5. Sorry to go on this tangent. Rook takes e5, b takes a4. And you're talking about the Caruana game against...
Yeah, Nakamura was white, Caruana black.
So many Caruana games here with both colors. Yes,
really?
2019 Singfield Cup.
Let's go. I knew it looked so familiar to me, and I remember appreciating it in real time, thinking that white was better because once you trade the dark square bishops, the knight can outclass a light square bishop, which is a defensive piece.
So that game, bishop e6 was played, which is a very rare move. Short castles, as played in this Anamuzachuk Lei Ting-J game, is very common. It's the main line. And here, I'm seeing Morozevich Rajaba from 2012. So this is actually a very well-known line. Bishop to a3, bishop a3, knight a3, rook to e8. This is why they play freestyle chess, folks. Because no matter what you play, it's been played like 800 years ago by Tarash, and then 1 year ago by MVL, Nepo, or Hikaru. So this position, we still have 19 games. This is the main move. Knight back to b1. Queen to c6 still has been played Still queen d2. All of this has been played. Still a bunch of games after bishop d7, I think. No, bishop d7 is a novelty. Sorry, bishop d7 is a novelty.
Danya, this looks like the type of position that you would absolutely hate to play from the black side. Not that anyone would really enjoy it, but especially you. There are no tactics. It's passive. That knight is about to jump into c5 if you allow it. So I like what Lei Tingzhe did in this game by keeping the pawn tension, not opening up the a file for the white rook, and just trying to capture a knight when it lands on a4.
Jospin has a game here. Against
who?
I love this person's name, and nobody seems to know why. Velimir Ivic.
Yes. Very strong grandmaster, by the way, improving his rating as of late.
But not Velimirovich. That's why I love his name.
No. Velimirovich is a different Dragolyub. Is that right?
Dragolyub. Yeah, very good. Yeah, we're Dragolyubing our feet here because there isn't much to say other than that white is not playing with any risk. Just one question, Robert. Why not knight takes a4? Like, why is what black... First of all, the reason black is delaying AB is understandable to me. The reason is she is afraid that white will take back with the c-pawn, put her rook on c1, and start clamping down like Akiba Rubinstein style on this backward c7 pawn. So I get that. Why is white not taking the opportunity to, like, take a pawn? I understand it's not the biggest pawn. What was the equalizing line here? Is it takes in queen a3?
Yeah, probably similar to what's happening in the game because she has, in fact, grabbed the... Yeah, she did in the next turn because Lei Tingzhe forced her to do it. Like, Lei's been playing a very nice game from the black side with a5, and if knight didn't take on a4, black's plan was to take on b3 at long last and then play a4 herself. So that's why Anna felt strongly encouraged to take on a4 at this moment.
Oh, so much for doubled pawns, getting rid of them on the same square. A very important positional technique. Now, she's played h6 in order to avoid queen takes a5, which otherwise in some positions would have been a threat. But she's probably not actively trying to, like, win one of these a pawns. But that is white's extra pawn. White's extra pawn is a doubled a pawn. It's like the lamest one you could have.
And in the event of the rooks and queens coming off, the game is immediately a draw. And I'm just setting the table, the scene, I guess, for what could happen, what trades black wants. Black is down a pawn, but Danya, if you can force the queens and rooks off somehow, like on the e-file at some point.
Yes, I can. I have that power.
Yes, if you could do me the tremendous favor of getting these pieces off.
And what else?
Like queen e3, king f8, queen
d8. Jeez, you want the queens off too? I mean, come on.
Yeah, everything.
Everything. So many demands that he's making. Yeah, what now?
But white is up a pawn, so sometimes people count material and say white should be winning because when you're ahead material, you want to trade pieces. That's what my coach taught me. But here it's a complete draw because there are no avenues for either king to get in from, and the presence of double pawns, and in particular double isolated pawns, means that a2 and a4 is just as good as only having an a4 pawn. It's not going anywhere.
You could put a pawn on a3 too, and it's why in the old days you could set up a position with bishop with the wrong color a pawn and put 8 bishops of the same color on the board, and Stockfish would give plus 900 because the computers would like weigh that heavily because you're up so much material. But a human, that was like the last holdout of human understanding. Now, of course, computers have been programmed not to do that, but we understood that it was still a draw.
And this would be, that kind of position.
Next game.
At some point, let's go back to the Hikaru game, I guess. But at some point, you think white is better up a pawn, and then you realize that there's nowhere to go. Oh, look at
we missed everything in the Hikaru game. Robert, just kidding. Gukesh hasn't made a single move after King G2 yet.
But look at Magnus' game, right? That has been all trades. We're going to get Armageddon between Wei Yi and Magnus.
I'm going to pull that game up. Sorry, guys, to keep jumping around. It's just like, as usual, everything happens at once. And the Magnus game will be a handshake any second.
And it's what we were talking about earlier, that C7 may fall. And B5 is a funny move, by the way.
Yep.
En passant, just
I'm so
back.
Cool. But look at me.
I didn't actually consider that move was legal, but it is just as good of a move as any other one. And the point is that, yes, white can win a pawn on C7, but the presence of opposite colored bishops, and white doesn't actually have a passer because of the double C pawns, and there's no progress to be made.
And that king is like some sort of rock formation. It's like Stonehenge. It was there thousands of years before we were born, and it'll be there thousands of years after the human race expires. That king on d5 is unassailable.
Yeah, it's strong, but it can't go anywhere either, which is just indicating this game is complete and utter draw. So we can move on and come back to them when we get to Armageddon.
What did Anish just tweet? Well, he's always tweeting something, but Hikaru said something just now. What did he say?
Which was? It's strong, but it can't go anywhere either.
I'm waiting. I'm
Waiting?
listening.
Well, I'll be very quiet for you.
Well, you have the white pieces today, and can you give us an indication how spicy your opening might be on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest?
You know, the funny thing is when people say that, there's some assumption that playing with the white pieces means you're the one who has to make it exciting. I actually would argue it's quite the opposite. Usually, it's more on the part of the black pieces as to whether they want to take big risk or they want to be very solid. There usually are two very straightforward approaches in that regard. So I think it's more on the part of the black pieces in general than actually the part of the white pieces, unlike in years past.
And final question, you're a very experienced chess player. Do you ever feel the nerves towards the end of the tournament or at any stage?
Well,
I mean, I think nerves within the context of trying to like win a game or being
okay,
in the moment,
that's enough.
By the way, Magnus and Wei have drawn their game. We look at Armageddon. And Danya, that comment about Black being the one who chooses whether it's a fighting game or not, I've actually heard many top players say that.
That's the one Gary's
because-
referring to, I'm assuming, and is surprised about.
And Gary disagrees with it.
I mean, do you ever like understand an implication of an Anish tweet? Like it's always like, okay, are we? He's like using the trolling as a security blanket for actually making, taking a position on anything. But I think he is surprised at that.
Got it. I haven't seen the tweet, so I will go try and look for it now. But I have heard other top players say that because they're like, with engine preparation, deep lines, like Black can equalize in a majority of them, and in order to get a fighting game, sometimes Black would need to take the risk.
Yeah, there's this sort of reminds me of this famous passage in Zurich 1953 by Bronstein.
Of course.
There's a passage in that book that's very confusingly worded, where Bronstein actually makes a deep point. He says that when one side has a color complex weakness, speaking of, like when one side has weak dark squares, actually that side has weak light squares. So my dad was reading this book to me when I was little, and I was like, wait, what? And then Bronstein explains, basically what happens is when one side has, weak light squares, they divert all of their pieces to protecting, those squares, which in turn causes the other color square to become weak through lack of attention. And it's kind of like, okay, so you think that white plays for a win, but actually, white just tries to be solid by default, so it's really Black who's playing for a win. But really, it's white who's playing for win because he knows that Black has that decision to make. So you just go down this he knows that I know that he knows route.
And then, so who knows?
I mean, nobody knows what I'm even saying, including myself. So I think I need to dig myself out of this hole before Gukesh makes a move, which gives me about 30 more minutes.
Well, that would be a tragedy for Gukesh. The position's already really bad. He is down almost an hour on the clock, and his position's not going to get easier while white plays moves, as we've been saying. H4, F4, H5, even queenless positions are still objectively practically winning for white. So something has gone really wrong for Gukesh for the third day in a row by move, what was it, 20?
Hikaru actually played 4 rounds of Title Tuesday in the time that Gukesh thought on the last 2 moves. He pre-moved King G2, and he has had the time to play half a tournament. Just kidding.
I was about to say that would be,
just
totally
bad. Yeah.
totally unacceptable. And I was like, "There's just no way." But you said it with a pretty straight face, so. Whew.
Yep. Well, I mean, there's all these stories in the old days. The time control, it was 2 hours and 30 minutes. And in the old days, in the time of Howard Staunton, there was no time limit. Or the time limit was something like 30 to 45 minutes per move. And during the old, do you know the Staunton-Saint-Amant matches?
The what, sorry?
The Staunton versus Saint-Amant matches.
No.
So, do you know who Saint-Amant was?
No.
Do you want to hear his full name? The full name of this person named Saint-Amant. He was the top French player in the early 19th century. And Howard Staunton, of course, you know who that is.
Yes.
Okay. Saint-Amant, his name was Pierre Charles Fournier, not Evan. Pierre Charles Fournier de Saint-Amant was a leading French chess master and editor of the chess periodical Le Palamède. Born 1800, died 1873.
Did you know that, I'm guessing it's Amand or something, with a French accent there, but learned chess from Wilhelm Schlumberger?
Wilhelm Schlumberger. And
That's-
no, I
I'm
thought he
reading-
learned from Wilhelm Schleinitz.
And I'm reading the Wikipedia page, and Wilhelm Schlumberger, who later became the operator of the Turk.
Oh, the Turk.
Yeah.
I see. Are you talking about Erdogmush?
No, I'm talking about Gorel.
Oh. All right. These conversations need to stop.
I was wondering where you'd go with it, and I figured it was there. But
Emery can't help it.
No. Just, I have to stop you before it gets too bad with the Turkish grandmasters that you're naming. Danya, I don't really know what to say. I feel like, Gukesh's play in the last few rounds has been shaky, to say the least. He scored 6 full points because it's football scoring, soccer scoring. And now he's playing the black side of this position against Hikaru, and he's played bishop to b6. And does that change anything? Can Hikaru just still do the same thing that we've been talking about?
No, it doesn't change anything, and I think I need to finish my story. Just kidding. I will finish my story about Staunton Saint-Amant, I promise. But
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
no, basically, the whole point is that they played a match, English top player versus the top French player, and then both of them had their own chess journals. Staunton had the leading English chess journal. Saint-Amant had the leading French chess journal, and they were going after each other after the match, where Staunton won. They started getting into a fight, publishing open letters to each other across many editions of their magazines. And one of Staunton's complaints was that Saint-Amant was abusing his privilege of thinking an unlimited amount per move, and essentially, I've got things to do, and I'm better than you anyway, and I crushed you anyway, so please pony up and take the loss like a man, like a man, and off they went. I'll read some passages from Staunton's magazine in a bit, because I have it.
Wow. So you're going to get us some Saint Amand Hamilton references. That sounds great. I can't wait to hear more history from you. Don, you are so full of historical knowledge. Like those bookshelves behind you, they just somehow seep into your brain in a way that is a delight
just the
for
top
us.
shelf, unfortunately.
Is that true?
Well,
You're a
top,
top
shelf
shelf
is like the
guy?
antique books, but I'm slowly increasing my collection. As unfortunately, I have not yet reached 3 million subscribers on YouTube, so it is a modest collection as of yet, but maybe one day.
It's funny. I see someone goes, his degree is literally history. And I didn't know that, Don.
What's your degree, Robert? Computer science. Wait, I remember Hess getting his diploma in mathematics.
Well, we
also
share a title in chess and a degree as well. So
Can't make that up.
it's true. And Danya, I'm trying to get back to this game, and I'm trying to just consider what Gukesh was thinking. I still don't have an answer. Maybe he will have to answer that after the game. But as you're highlighting h4, queen c5, f4, there's a check on f2 that does all of nothing. The white king slides out to h3 and says, you've done nothing to stop me from playing h5 next and going for the black king.
Mm-hmm.
There really is nothing for black, right? This is just as one-sided as it gets.
Don't play h5 here. I mean, you wouldn't play it just out of principle. I'm actually curious. Rook h1. I guess queen to g5. Oh, queen back to c5 is the point. And folks, you should be able to find the move after queen takes g6. This is not advisable because the queen steps into f2, forcing the king in front of the rook, at which point the queen can be taken. And actually, this is like move for move. It works out for black. Bishop c4, rook f7. In Bughouse, you would put a rook on e8, and it would be, well, black would then put a knight on f8, and off we would go. And that's why I don't play Bughouse. But you're not going to do any of this if you're Hikaru. He's not just going to arbitrarily take this amount of risk, which leaves us where? h4, queen c5. I heard you say f4, Robert. Can you help explain a move like this?
I didn't want to allow queen f2, and then I thought there was, oh, well, there's not rook takes f3, which is what I was worried about, because if you actually show, I couldn't play h5 anyway. So all the moves I'm suggesting are blunders, but let's play a4 instead of f4 for a second.
Mm-hmm.
I was worried that queen f2 check, king h3, and then there was rook takes f3 because the back rank check would be met by the rook going back to f8. But unfortunately, white has another lovely tactic:
Beautiful.
queen takes f3 and rook e8 mate.
And there's two different mates here. Queen f8 check, and rook e8 checkmate. So whichever heavy piece black takes, one of them will do the honors. H4 has been played, obviously. H4 has been played. I think Gukesh will, within seconds, respond with queen to c5. I think you'll see that reflected on the small board. And by the way, I will be keeping an eye on the Magnus game on my phone here, because one small criticism of this tournament is that it seems that the Armageddon games, maybe they start the same amount of time after the classical game ends, but it doesn't seem that way.
The game just starts, and then we have to scramble to.
And they're like
cover
20
it.
moves in before you like manage to open it.
I kind of like it in some ways because instead of having to wait until after all the games finish when everyone's tired and has waited too long, this is kind of nice to be in the flow of the round. But I also agree that it feels somewhat hectic, and unlike this position, it's.
Let me ask a dumb question. Let's say I check
Sure.
you and I go back to c5. And f4, of course, I think is a good move to throw in just because you don't want to deal with the pawn being hanging on f3. How are you going to improve your position further? Because it's clearly not h5. The computer likes this. I mentioned this earlier, queen e7 to trade queens, actually, at this point.
Well, that's what I was going to say because you mentioned earlier the queen trade is still winning for white. So I don't know if Hikaru knows that, but I have that information, so I was going to play queen e7.
He definitely knows it because I think by process of elimination, right? You're sitting there with the white pieces. Maybe Hikaru will throw an a4. I don't think that that's going to be a significant factor in this game. So you're going to look at h5. You're going to try to make it work. It doesn't work. Moves like g4 are very non-Hikaru-esque. They're also probably very bad because it exposes the king, giving black counterplay. Right? Let's remember also that... Ooh, that's a big ass. B-ass. I'm glad my windows are closed. It's summer in Charlotte. I mean, we got those bugs. And great call, Robert. F4 is on the board.
Sorry, I'm just reading the chat. I apparently misinterpreted something you said, which wouldn't be the first time, but I don't think we're misinterpreting what's happening in this game, where Hikaru just gets to push all his pieces, and all Gukesh can do is shuffle back and forth and hope that Hikaru can't crash through.
Somebody said Nepo blundered, but Nepo, think, was streaming Title Tuesday? He's not playing this tournament.
Oh.
It took me a second.
I was very confused. What do you mean Nepo blundered? Like, he's not here.
Now I'm curious. He was playing Nguyen from Vietnam. Now I have to check if he blundered or whatnot. I don't think.
And I see people asking about Queen E8. So Queen E8's a good idea in general from the white side because black can't take that queen, but it actually doesn't threaten anything because the black queen is already protecting the rook back there. So it's a good tactic. I'm glad that you're seeing these kind of ideas, but it doesn't create the next wave of attack, which is what white needs. And if white gets this move h5 in successfully, you see that g6 pawn is the only thing stopping queen takes h7 checkmate. So white wants to distract this g pawn. And Daniel, in some positions, white could play h5 even with the queen on c5, like rook h1 coming next. So black needs to be very, very careful.
Yeah, well, he's been very careful, has Gukesh, but Hikaru is officially, as of, yes, now he is up an entire hour on the clock. An hour and 0 minutes, folks. It's like being lapped in a race.
Yeah, it doesn't feel good at all, especially when the position is so one-sided. And Danya, I just want to note that we have another bishops of opposite color position between Arjun-Caruana and Fabiano Caruana. That one has way more life to it than, say, the Wei Yi versus Magnus game. But just wanted to say that's the theme today: opposite color bishops.
It is indeed. But if we had to qualify the theme, it would be seeing that opposite colored bishops truly do produce a lot of life. So whether it gives the position drawish tendencies or the opposite is entirely position dependent. And where's...
Love that night.
Fabi doesn't have a pawn on e4. Sorry.
he took with a rook instead, so it's still even material, and the d5 pawn's a target, but the bishop on e3 currently is under attack. And one question is, can you go full Fischer and take on a7?
All right, well, let's ask Boris. Of course, Boris Spassky passing away recently. Such a legendary career, punishing people for taking corner pawns. Can I go for full Spassky with b6?
That's what I'm trying to figure out, because d5 is loose as well.
Doesn't feel like
And
it should work for black, yeah?
but it also feels like maybe you get enough counterplay because white has to put all those pieces to make sure the bishop isn't lost.
So rook takes d5. Where is black going to move this bishop? Like c6?
But then I was wondering if queen f5 is an idea. Like, can you get away with that? The bishop
So
does.
complicated.
I don't think the bishop gets trapped back there.
So bishop c6. I can also play bishop e6. By the way, that looks flimsy. You want to play queen f5?
Yes.
What happens if I... Oh, yeah, that's hanging with the checkmate. Okay, rook a8.
Trade queens and rook d4.
You piece... Bishop b5?
And at the very least, white can probably take the knight and play bishop takes b6, but maybe there's something else here.
There is some check, but okay, clear white is not risking here, yeah? It's clear white is not risking here. Oh, how about this idea? Wait, let me try to make this work. Oh, it doesn't. Oh, that would have been so sick. I was trying to go g4 and like rook d8 check and knight to d4 and threaten this checkmate with knight f5 and rook g8. Unfortunately, black can defend both threats at the same time.
So, Danya, start back there for a second before you went g4.
Okay.
What about knight h4? Does that work somehow?
Uh-huh. Talk about indirect defense. I take it. Check.
Check.
Here. Check here. I don't think you have mate.
So e4?
We've gone too deep.
No, knight f5 check first, and then whatever. It's that kind of idea. Like, I thought the black king was getting mated.
What is the upshot? The upshot of this is that bishop takes a7 is a move that is being very seriously considered. If you're not playing bishop a7, let's say Arjun's like, I think it's a little too scary. I'm trying to mitigate my risk. Is he going to play bishop to d4? Is rook takes d5 on the table? No, probably not, because of knight takes e3 and rook takes c3.
Wait, but then there's queen d2 at the
D2.
end of that?
Bishop e8, rook e5, rook c,
Rook d8 instead of rook e5.
king f8, and then rook d6. Yeah, rook c1,
Something like that.
King f2, queen a1.
Well,
Jesus.
I
No,
think
knight.
what you're
No, never mind.
what you're illustrating is that at this very moment, bishop takes a7 requires like 8 moves deep of calculation, and rook takes d5, knight takes e3, rook takes c3 for black requires about 6 to 8 moves of calculation. So this is a position where you're not going to get away with just stumbling into the correct answer. You really have to dig deep, and there are no takebacks in chess. So you can't take on a7 and then say, just kidding, my bishop got trapped, I'm not going to do that again. You have to be absolutely certain.
And when you touch a piece, you need to move it, and when you touch an enemy's piece, you need to take it. Oh, Gary.
Well, I'm not going to dive into that one, but poor Judith.
Or Kimovich. Yeah, Judah was talking about sharing some stories during her sojourn in Charlotte. And it was such a great time, so full of knowledge, so full of just the casualness with which she talks about, I played this tournament with like Kasparov, Shirov, like all these players. And, she was not just holding her own, but achieving such great successes. Just such a person who just, certain people just exude this aura that that they're serious people who've gone through so much and have so much wisdom to share. You can just like intuitively tell. And I don't like to meet people like that in the airport because then I get very nervous and very shy.
Well, you have the utmost respect for all the top players, the legends of the game of yesterday and tomorrow and today. And
yesteryear.
Danya, well, like yesterday and the day before, today Gukesh is on the back foot, struggling, and he is now down to 31 minutes to Hikaru's 1 hour 37. And I'm really struggling to just understand if the blunder, the mistake,
Four.
it was self-induced, and the capture that he played on G6, like how many moves later are we? 5?
It was the decisive mistake. Isn't it crazy? The decisive mistake was f takes g6. And the only mistake, I think, essentially. And it's +4 according to Ceci. +4. That's like being up 4 pawns or a piece and a pawn, if you please.
Because black has no activity, can't do much of anything, just has to wait his impending doom. And I mean, I actually disagree with the comment. Most unfair blunder I've seen, even if f takes, is ridiculous. Like, it breaks a lot of principles of chess to take away from the center, to not give your king luft off the back rank. So it goes against just common principles in chess. And you can see what's happening now is that black king is stuck in the corner, and it's not more defended than it would have been if h6 g6. So I guess, yeah, I agree with that. It's surprising more so than unfair. It's just it's a surprising decision more than anything. I'm really struggling to. I've said that word so many times now, Danya. I think I need your help. Like f takes g6 didn't make sense, and it was unexpected, and it's something that Gukesh obviously would want to take back.
Yeah, I mean, our job as commentators is, well, it's sort of, you have to sit on many chairs, as you'd say in Russian. You need to be, primarily, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm a great fan of all these players. I love watching top-level chess. I love watching them do what I could never do, find moves that I could never find, go through thought processes that I can't even go through in the comfort of my own home, sometimes with the eval bar. That just gives me such a rush, and it's such a privilege to be able to do that. At the same time, I enjoy passing along all of this wisdom to people who are watching, who are maybe newer to the game. And you don't want to distort the narrative and sort of whitewash like every mistake that is made and pretend that, players never have really, really bad moments or really bad games. And f takes g6 was one of those moments where there is just nothing to say. It's just a terrible move. And I didn't understand that fully without your help, Robert. So you, I think, understood the essence of the position very quickly. I thought, okay, black is worse, but manageable. And the longer we looked at this position, the more we understood how bad it was. So I think it was just a conceptual error where Gukesh thought that it was a draw this way and a draw that way. Maybe Hikaru was sort of psychologically signaling that he was okay with a draw. And I remember making a mistake like that once against Sam Shankland. After which I came back to my hotel room, and you don't want to know. You wouldn't want to spend time with me, let's say, the next couple of hours after that. I'm happy to show, by the way, it was also an opposite colored bishop position.
Danya, Armageddon is live, so we don't have time for that detour. But Wei Yi against Magnus Carlsen, it's a bishop's opening, and I think that Wei Yi will have to show that he's got some just kind of, I don't even know the right word for it, but he needs to show some tenacity here, because right now he's played a quiet start, and the clock looks frozen. Oh, now it's gone.
Don't you worry, Robert. I can always show that game after the world ends. And we have, okay, knight takes c5, folks. Obviously lost bishop. Obviously lost the knight. This is such a typical trap across many lines and with both colors. So instead, Wei Yi castles. Now knight takes c5 is a threat, and d5 here is not advisable for several reasons, which I don't have time to show. Hikaru likes to put his knight on c3, but we see Wei Yi playing in a more traditional Italian fashion, putting a pawn on c3. But a weird Italian it is, Robert, because Magnus doesn't have a knight on c6, he also has a pawn on c6.
It looks more like a Philidor, this position from the black side, except white doesn't have a pawn on d4. So that should mean that black is very solid. And Danya, something we've seen, the difficult choice for the players is, do I go as direct as I can from the start, like Arjun did against Wei Yi, or do I keep the position a bit amorphous and then try to use the clock advantage against black? So right now, Magnus is down 3.5 minutes. He started down 3, and he hasn't exactly played this opening very quickly.
He is keeping it in the position amorphy. God, that pawn was appalling. Okay, enough. Magnus now with 5.5 minutes. He, of course, lost his first Armageddon to Wei Yi with the white pieces in that Jabava London, and he lost because of Wei Yi's theoretical knowledge. So here he takes the game, let's say, out of a theoretical grounding and more towards something ultra conceptual. Sorry, I'm so surprised at knight f8. I can't even talk straight. Knight g5 is met with knight e6.
And then black is saddled with these double e pawns, but then once black castles, the f file is open for a potential attack. This is actually quite standard in these lines. So Wei Yi, he's been thinking, he's trying to figure out what to do next. This position is one where it's quiet for now, reminiscent of the Italian, but it has the potential to heat up d4 right now. Done is probably what I would play.
It is standard, folks, to play knight f1 with the white side. That's more typical before white castles in the Italian. Oftentimes you see the knight getting around to g3. Here the center is closed, so black, Magnus says, I can afford such luxuries. But you're absolutely right. I think d4 is the move that Wei is trying to weigh the pros and cons of.
I feel like he should just go for it. I don't know if it actually pans out because black can play knight g6 and just defend, and it's not like white has misstepped, but black is in time to redevelop that knight and then castle kingside and make sure everything is protected.
And the price of a move here is not very high, right? Whether or not he makes the decision to play d4 is actually not, I think, truly essential to the flow of the game. So it's better to make a decision faster rather than to quote-unquote make the right decision, but let your time advantage evaporate. So Wei Yi should move in the next 30 seconds at the most.
I agree. He needs to play quickly, keep pace, and keep a lead on the clock. By the way, Gukesh has offered a queen trade. I just took a peek over there, and it's a pawn sacrifice. I'm wondering if Hikaru will take it because he can just keep the queens on the board and keep the status quo, but he can win a pawn if he wants it.
Yeah, for anybody watching, you can take on f5 twice, and because of black's back rank, you cannot take back. So we are not missing anything cataclysmic in that game. I'm keeping an eye on it as well.
So Wei Yi still hasn't made his move. This is odd to me, Danya, because he's just given away half of his time advantage.
He is doing the, Ivanchuk versus Anand from that famous viral blitz game where Ivanchuk takes 4 minutes in a 5-minute game. He takes something like, 2 minutes on his move. And he finally does play d4, but he precedes that with queen to b3, inviting the knight to e6.
But he's inviting knight to e6 to take it away from g6 to keep that center as healthy as it can be. But black has very natural moves here. Daniel White should play knight f1, probably knight to g3, try to get the knight into f5. It feels slow.
I know it says point 2, but from a Philidor perspective, when black has b7, b5 with tempo like this, you have to maybe burn another move on a4. There's all sorts of center fork tactics with knight takes c4 and d5. To me, from an intuitive flow of the game perspective, with Wei Yi now cutting his time advantage to below a minute, no, I think Magnus is well on the way already out of the opening to taking this one.
What Wei Yi needs to do is play just quick moves because his long things, they haven't netted him an advantage, so he needs to just keep the pressure on the clock. And we have seen Magnus go wrong in time trouble against Gukesh, of course, but also against Hikaru in that Armageddon game.
Okay, knight c4. And I love the move bishop f1 by Wei Yi. That shows an understanding that everything back, let's keep the pieces on the board, and let's not give Magnus any easy wins, literally and figuratively. Knight to c4 now. The pawn on e5 is hanging, and the b6 square is a wide open gap, which precludes black from taking and playing d5. I think Magnus may have missed this detail. Maybe he was a little bit over eager in playing a5.
And now, if black has to play knight d7, an awkward retreating move, leaving the bishop stuck at home on c8, then white just develops the bishop to e3. And I'm not sure, Danya, if black will be in time to play b6, because the bishop on e3, the knight on c4, the queen on b3, they all stare at that b6 square. It could be tactically problematic for black.
I jinxed him as usual, and I was going to show this on the small board. I won't even have to show it. Let's wait until Wei Yi takes back, which I assume he will.
He could throw knight b6 in first. That's the only reason he'd be calculating right now, because c takes d4 is automatic.
And knight b6 would run into, and he's played in rook a6 now, would run into, oh, hello, there's a bishop on f1, folks. You can't do that. You can't do that. You have to play rook to b8, I assume, or rook a7. Great call, Robert. That is what he was thinking about, and he puts it into effect. And is white just, seriously better here, or does Magnus have something very concrete? Maybe he'll move the knight back to open the door for this bishop. Or bishop d8.
Yeah. Bishop d8 I like the most. I'm not saying I like black's position, but it forces the issue. The knight on b6 is now under attack. If it takes the bishop on c8, black takes back. And even though black is cramped, with fewer pieces on the board, you do gain more space for your remaining pieces.
Yeah, I'm happy to put another game up on the small board, by the way, if there's something big happening.
No, we haven't seen a move in Arjun against Fabi or in Hikaru against Gukesh. And I'm looking at the women. There's still plenty of action to see there. So nothing, I think, would take our attention away from this.
No moves have been made, except in this game where plenty of moves have been made. A bishop pair seized by Wei, and very often in such positions, typical plan is to re-fianchetto the bishop.
Diner, this doesn't look so bad for black to me, because typically the downside of playing in this manner is that white gains a tremendous amount of space, but black is competing in the center, and also there's no target that white can exploit. Like a5 is protected, b7 is protected, d6 can't be attacked. So I have to say that all things considered, Magnus doing okay on the board and doing pretty well on the clock.
Given how many concessions Magnus has made, I absolutely agree. Now, what would I do if I were Wei? Maybe drop the queen back, because the queen on b3 may look impressive, but it actually offers black a nice little target of his own to offer a queen trade, which I think would not play into white's hands given how much pressure the center is under. I would consider queen c2, maybe fianchetto the other bishop. Instead, he puts that bishop on d2. I've played Magnus so many times in Blitz. He loves moves like queen b6.
Yeah, he loves the end game, and I think in Armageddon, where a draw is equivalent to a win for black, that players just fear queen trades. A queen b6, there's no universe where he's going to take that queen. Instead, he'll move his queen probably to, okay, I was going to say c2, but that hangs a pawn in the center, so d3 keeps the d4 pawn protected, Danya, but the game goes on, and then white can use a rook lift, rook a3 later.
It's giving me like flashbacks to all of the end games I've had against Magnus. You said he loves the endgames, especially against Naroditsky. But queen d3 here runs into d5, stabilizing the center, and then maybe establishing a knight on e4. I'm starting to warm to black's position here once again. And I'm a people pleaser in this game. I'm like, white is better and black is better at the same time. I just can't make up my mind.
I think that black's position feels very healthy for the time being. He has played queen d3, d5, the immediate reply. Now here's a big question. I thought e5 was the right choice because e takes d5 would have left white with an isolated queen pawn. Here, Danya, white can maybe play bishop c3. I know the bishop isn't strong over there, but eventually white would like to cut the board in half and use the pawn advantage on the king side, e to h file, and try to get an attack.
And your point is well taken. He plays bishop e3, which is the more natural move, but the bishop is in the way of all of the other pieces. It is cutting the supply lines, the logistics chains between the rook and the queen. And yes, the pawn on d4 is well protected, but look at all the other holes in white's position. The bishop coming to b4, the prospect of undermining white's center with c5, this beautiful knight coordination, the knight on e4 well established, the knight on e6 putting longer term pressure on white's center. Where's the time advantage? It's disappearing.
It's gone. And knight d2 is taken away from white because after knight takes d2, queen takes d2 was the desired reply, but the bishop e7 sets up bishop to b4. That's an outpost for black to use.
Overprotection, way overprotecting the d4 pawn, untying his hands for action on the king side. I would play g3 and bishop h3. You need to find a job for this bishop on f1. It can't just be, sitting on mama's couch and watching us commentate.
G3 is a great idea, Danya. G3, H4, bishop H3, just play on the king side. White does have more pawns on that flank, and you have a bishop pair. You want open diagonal, so G3 is a great choice.
Still, time is not the deciding factor yet, but you've got this 3-minute time advantage. Psychologically, I've played enough Armageddons to tell you it feels bad when you watch your clock tick down, and now you have to win on the board and only on the board.
Uh-oh, queen b1, lining up bishop to d3,
bad.
c5. See, Donnie, when someone's trying to attack you, you try to play in the center, and that's what Magnus recognized, that bishop d3 would not have been in time. And so Wei takes control of a key square, but it feels like black is liquidating, trading off key pieces. And if you take on d4 right now and play bishop c5 to follow, what does white have left?
Bishop c5 straight away might run into some tactics with knight f5. Maybe that's what Magnus is calculating.
But then bishop takes e3, and knight e7 check feels a little bit too slow.
Magnus might be asking himself, do I want to take on d4 and preclude all of these complications, or do I trust my calculation? He invests that time advantage into making what I think Magnus thinks is the most important decision. If he gets these next few moves right, I think Magnus feels that he's got this in the bag. But let's not forget, the 1 second increment is not much, and it only kicks in 16 more moves.
Yeah, move 24, knight takes d4, played by Wei Yi. Magnus
Gotta go,
is taking a long time here. He
He
needs
did
to
this
play
against
faster.
Nakamura. Let's not forget what he did. He froze. Okay, good. He's moved.
Yes, and he's just trading pieces. Bishop c5 has to be the follow-up. There go those dark square bishops. Danya, I think that Wei Yi should play queen d3 and try to go for this end game where black has his isolated queen pawn, and you can kick out the knight with f2 to f3 in the near future.
Got no choice. He's got no choice. If Wei Yi would have taken on c5, there was no way to defend f2 there. Magnus kicks the ball across the field. Make a move, he says.
And Wei Yi now down to 2 minutes and 10 seconds himself, even on the clock, even on the board. Who is going to play better from here on out?
Queen e3 would run into bishop takes d4, and black's rook can infiltrate c3. There's so many different avenues of infiltration. Oh, then rook takes c4 at the end.
Exactly. Yes,
Ho, ho,
good
ho.
find. That rook takes d4 would be threatening. Rook takes knight, even and rook takes d5 as well in some
Whoa.
positions. So black needs to be careful.
Watch out. Rook takes c4, now a threat. If the pawn was back on a7, this wouldn't have been a problem. Magnus has to move the queen away. I would say queen e6 here is the most prudent.
Queen e6 looks very good to me. He can also move the knight, and he does do that. Oh, I wasn't looking that direction. I thought you hung the knight, but d4 is loose.
Rook takes d5 is possible here, and it would technically win a pawn in the endgame, but that is a Pyrrhic victory if there ever was one.
Although, in some of these positions, Danya, you allow black's rook to infiltrate, and the white rook gets to c7, so you give up b2, get b7. The f7 pawn's the real target that white needs to go after.
Remember, folks, this is an Armageddon game, which means white has to win. A draw is equivalent to a win for black. Wei Yi is watching his clock tick down, and he is watching his chances disappear with every further ticking second. The problem isn't on the clock, it's on the board. I don't see how he gets this dub unless Magnus makes a grievous blunder.
Well, the big problem for Wei Yi is the queens are coming off whether he likes it or not, because knight e6 is almost pre-movable. It won't be played after rook takes d5, but the queens will get swapped, as you mentioned. So now knight e6, I think, looks good to my eyes, and you trade rooks. There's rook c2 at the end, Danya. How in the world could white be better here?
Knight e4 merits consideration. Were this not a game that you can afford drawing, Magnus is spoiled for choice. Queen takes g5. He blundered on d8 with track.
Oh,
A grievous
my
blunder, I said.
Wei Yi spots it, Danya. That was easier spot once the eval shot up. But Wei Yi just did this all by himself.
Not over
No
yet,
shoulder
though,
kick.
Josh. Not over yet. Rook takes f2. Magnus recovers quickly. King takes f2. Was possible. Wei Yi gets a kingdom and a horse for the queen.
Kingdom and a bishop this time. So 2 rooks and a bishop for the queen. Danya, it is a winning material advantage. Is there a way that Magnus can complicate matters and just make Wei Yi think?
50 seconds to make 7 moves just to get that 1 second increment. Wei Yi has to link up his rooks. Rook ad1, once it's played, seals the deal. Unless Magnus can get some sort of a perpetual with his queen. But there's too many obstacles. Robert, what do you see?
The white king just feels a little bit too open for my liking, and at some moment I think white would like to line up on the f7 pawn, but Wei Yi playing rook 1 to d4, queen c2 check, they're going to be checked. Do you like that king on f3?
Yes, heads up move by Wei Yi, because the b2 pawn you don't care about as long as your bishop stays anchored in. Black cannot put his pawn advantage to good use. 32 more moves to make until the increment. Queen f5 check meets with rook f4. Oh, that's why Magnus played g5.
That's a great move from Magnus.
Bishop
He's losing,
c4.
we all know it. But bishop c4, queen f5 check.
King e3 and king d3.
You're just running away.
It's checkmate. Once the pawn on f7 disappears, white's pieces converge on black's king like zombies. Like zombies finding a corpse.
And so Magnus tries to hide his queen, thinking that there will not be a checkmate. And don't forget, rook f7, king g6, the d6 score is covered. So he starts with rook to d6, and Donna, Wei Yi wants to slide his king to a2, where it has complete safety.
And the Grim Reaper is knocking on the door here, and the door is a flimsy one indeed. They're knocking. Wei Yi is going to hide his king. Give up as many pawns as you need to. It doesn't matter.
That king is safe and sound on a2. This should be over, and Wei Yi continues to be a menace in Armageddon.
Queen takes h3 and queen f5. Maybe the last chance for Magnus. He tries to to hide his king, and the king is wide open. It has no castle to hide in. Rook to c7. Blunders a rook to queen g3. Watch out. Link up the rooks. 5 seconds.
Wait, he's got to find him. He goes rook g6, rook g8 is the mate that he's aiming for.
Surgical. Give him a stethoscope, folks, and give Magnus room, because he just butchered another Armageddon. Wei Yi somehow pulls it off.
Danya, it all came down to one bad move from Magnus Carlsen. knight to g5, or sorry, rook to c2, excuse me, at that moment was a howler. The knight on g5 previously could not be captured, and I think we should show the first time why it couldn't be captured and what changed the second time around. And Wei Yi capitalizes on what's usually an uncharacteristic Magnus mistake, but an Armageddon, well, all hell breaks loose.
And Magnus getting too fancy. Knight g5 was excellent. Can't take it because of queen takes d4. And with the rooks defending each other, it's the end of the story. Now, once Wei Yi drops the queen back, you have a choice, Robert. You can go knight e4, you can go knight e6. You can literally do anything except what Magnus did, which was this unbelievably just uncharacteristic blunder rook c2. Now the rooks are disconnected, and the situation changes. Queen takes g5, and queen takes d4 is met with queen takes d8. Not only does this pick up a rook, it does so with check. Otherwise, black would have checkmate of his own. Queen returns to f6, and the attack is over. And what a heads-up move by Wei Yi, taking on d8, taking on f2, and he has way too much material for the queen. Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
That had mutual oversight written all over it under other circumstances, but Wei Yi, he's doing his puzzle rush, he's eating his Wheaties, and he's finding queen takes knight the second time around. The d8 rook was loose. That's why we always tell you to see what changes with each and every move. And after that, Danya, I don't think Magnus had any chances whatsoever because Wei Yi was able to find shelter for his king and then get his rooks and bishop active.
Magnus, and I'm going to pull up the Hikaru game here in the meantime. As Arjun, he did put the bishop on d4, so only one move was made. We watched an entire chapter of this tournament be written in that time. Robert, again, I'm backseat quarterbacking here, but Magnus is not in his usual headspace. You just don't see these types of things happen this often to Magnus.
It's surprising. And shout out to Bortnik for the raid for you. And I see I Am Rosen throwing his party into to this stream. So thank you. Welcome, everybody. The invitation wasn't sent, but you still are here. So thank you so much for joining us. We're covering Norway Chess 2025. And I'm sure we'll see many familiar faces, including Mr. International Master Eric Rosen.
Yeah, I was just trying to see Magnus's reaction. I mean, he didn't have much of a reaction. I think he's just sort of accepted that this is not his tournament. For those just joining us, I'll check who won Title Tuesday. But we just watched Magnus in a virtually unlosable position in the Armageddon blunder a piece in one move. And that was the only way, really, that game was going to turn around, was through a one-move blunder.
And people are saying that Magnus is signing autographs now, so perhaps he's over it. He just wants to be done with today and maybe the rest of the event, but there's still plenty to play for in Norway. And Danya, I think one person in particular who has a lot to play for is Fabiano Caruana, because he entered today in clear first place. Magnus's loss in Armageddon can only help Caruana, and Fabi's position, it looks pretty solid as well. So Fabi playing some great classical chess in Norway.
Also, I would qualify the amazing achievement by Wei Yi. We congratulate him warmly. But as Hikaru said in one of his recaps, the Armageddon games don't impact classical rating. They do impact the tournament standings, but at this point, again, let's call a spade a spade. Magnus, I don't think he cares as much as he usually does. He wants to win. Obviously, I'm not implying anything. But he does want the tournament to be over, and he's not going to get too broken up about the Armageddon, as we saw in the Aragaisi Nakamura Armageddon. Remember that one where Hikaru had it in the bag?
And yeah, that was something you don't see. But it's kind of like we say that, and now it's meaningless because we've seen it every single day, where these top players are blundering away tactics that they usually see in their sleep.
I think freestyle chess would help with it. Okay, let's watch this game.
I just checked, by the way, because you mentioned how Armageddon does impact classical rating. Pragnanda won his game today in the Avagian Memorial against Benjamin Gladura. So Prague up to number 6 in the world, 2770 live rating.
You can say that again.
2770
I knew
live
you were
rating.
Going to do that. Wow,
I'm
third
just
time's
a very
the charm.
literal person sometimes.
2770. Try that on for size. Pragnananda, such an amazing career path. You know, kind of getting quote-unquote stuck in the 2600s, persevering, working on his game. I had the honor and privilege of losing to him in the World Rapid. Very painful game for me, but also very, very impressive performance by him and a good learning experience. That guy's a beast. He is someone who lets his move speak for himself.
He definitely does, and he's playing great chess. So if Arjun were to lose this game, Prague would then slide into world number 5 ahead of Aragaisi. So there's so much happening each and every day in the chess world, and between these top Indian players, like the lineup may change depending on the result in a given round.
Now wait, it's Sanache 17. I played every Freestyle Friday since its inception. I want you to check the standings of the last Freestyle Friday, and check what city both of the top finishers, Sasha Bortnik, won, but some freestyle hater who clearly would never spend his time playing freestyle chess was in second place. I absolutely don't. I respect it tremendously. But nothing is immune from a little bit of ribbing, good-natured ribbing.
I'm with you, especially from you. You almost always mean well. I'm sure there's one time at some point where you didn't, but I would say universally you are well-intentioned. And Danya, it's just true. But I'm just trying to figure out sort of the lay of the land right now. I mentioned how Pragnanda is closing out on Arjun if Arjun were to lose today, but I don't see that happening at the moment. But that game is still full of life. The one we're looking at, Hikaru, just chugging along, has had a great position this whole game. But can you see an out for Gukesh? Like, is there something that Hikaru can do that will allow Gukesh to formulate a plan? Because that's Black's biggest problem in this game, is that he hasn't had a single plan because White has key control over the vital squares.
I'm going to answer your question with sort of, not a question, but I almost feel like White has a similar problem where you have so many assets, but eventually you have to choose, okay, this is the asset that I'm going to try to convert into a tangible advantage. What am I talking about? Well, for example, the fact that a queen trade leads to an overwhelming endgame, Hikaru decided not to take on f5 twice. I think most people watching us, including myself, I would not be able to resist the juicer, I should say, on f5. Gukesh obviously intended g6, right? So his idea was to give up a pawn, but in return to finally gain a little bit of breathing room for his king. And the 3-on-2 should result in victory, but I don't think Hikaru was confident enough. Or maybe Hikaru felt that he can essentially get this whenever he wants to, so let's try to win the game with the queens on the board.
That position, the queenless position, I think White can play rook e5, pawn to h5,
yeah,
and just try to create a weakness there. And maybe objectively it is winning, but you want to be 1,000% sure before you liquidate like this, because there's no takebacks, right? Once the queens are gone, they're not coming back unless both sides promote. So that wouldn't be that clear. And that's why Hikaru said, I can get that later. Play queen to c4. The queen went back to f6. And I feel like Hikaru can just plant his rook on e5 now and say, I'm restricting the scope of all of your pieces.
I think the time situation did play was a factor in his decision-making because, 25 minutes at this point for Gukesh. So if things get mildly tactical, that'll be yet another problem that Gukesh has to deal with. Of course, the majority of the problems are on the board. Hikaru's taking his time here. Rook e5 is the kind of move I could see him playing instantly. In like a Title Tuesday, that move would be on the board before you finished counting how many places you would go down after you lost to him.
So I see that Bro Coffee is saying rook e5, queen e6, a4 for White is the engine recommended line, which makes perfect sense. Like, I actually think that's not a too computery for humans to find. It's very logical, because by pushing a4, you threaten to dislodge that black bishop from b6, and then the c7 pawn would immediately become weaker. The bishop on b6 actually gets trapped because bishop d4 is always meant by rook to d5. So, Danya, it's a funny position where White is gaining space, Black can play a5 as you're highlighting, but eventually, White can then even consider playing c4, c5 if that becomes available as a next wave. But, White can go queen e4, White can just kind of do all sorts of things, and queen d4 now is no longer possible because the a5 pawn would drop.
That's such a great point, that it not only destabilizes somewhat the bishop on b6, you can also imagine a not-so-distant future where White's king gets to the queen side and you sack an exchange on b6. So it's just a no-brainer to throw this in. It has no downsides. So after queen e4, let's try to give this kind of a concrete contour, like what is actually going to happen in this game. You're threatening h5, right? That is now a huge threat.
Yes.
And if I play queen to d4, Do you have...
Take it.
So rook e8 here allows queen takes e4 with check, unfortunately. So now you take and take on a5. This game is over. I can't play queen d4. How else can I try to trade the queens? Queen to b4? Still take it.
I think you can still take it because the outside pass pawn is so dangerous.
I mean, I wouldn't... See, people think of me as a late resigner, but this is the kind of position I actually could see myself resigning.
There's just no plan.
Yeah, I'm exaggerating slightly, of course, but I don't even see a move. Forget the plan. I don't see a single move here. How do you stop h5? What am I missing?
You're missing nothing.
I'm missing classical chess. If you could give me a position like this every time with the white pieces.
That was a very smooth transition. Danya, there really is no plan for black. Like rook d8, you get back rank mated with rook e8 check. If the bishop moves, we've talked about how the a5 pawn drops. h5 is a threat, and the queen and bishop for white are in a battery, threatening checkmate on h7. It's over. I just don't see anything.
Well, you're thinking schematically. You're saying like black has no plan. I don't even. Playoffs, like plan, like, make a move, another move, like before. Yeah, so this is just a disaster.
Practice? We talking about practice?
Not a game. Not a game. Not the game. Practice. Nick Raptis. You know who that is?
A chess player, I assume.
Okay, yeah, he's a West Coast guy, so you wouldn't know. He's from Oregon.
I got it right.
2300, like played in all the same tournaments that I played for a long time.
Nice. So a very obscure reference for me, but one that I still got.
There's going to be like one person in the chat. Sometimes I'll make a reference and, like two people in the chat get it because it's to some like ridiculous, obscure, old Soviet movie. Like the Downfall of Engineer Dubov.
That's a movie that you know of, clearly?
It's a Soviet movie. Is The Downfall of Engineer Garin, not Garin Kasparov. It's from the early 70s. So when Dubov lost a game to Hans, I said, The Downfall of Engineer Dubov. And I was like, that's a great reference. And everybody ignored it. Sad.
Did you watch the Jungle Book since we last spoke about it?
I have not.
How about the Terminator?
I think I'm going to Terminator this conversation because I haven't watched that either. Are you going to Terminator this commentary as a result?
No, I've already forgiven you. It's okay. We'll move on to a topic that both of us can participate in.
Let's talk about Citizen Kane. Yeah. Mr. Hess goes to Washington, and Mr. Naroditsky chooses another game.
Okay. To which game shall we go?
You're the flight engineer. What about the women's section? Anything interesting happening there? And Muzuchik J draw.
So we should keep an eye out for Armageddon, is what you're saying?
Vaishali Juwanjun will also be in Armageddon. And Sara Kadem Humpy Kaneru is also equal.
Yes, Sara's probably slightly worse because her pawn structure is a bit compromised. But in positions like that, you have to count all the pluses that you can. And for black, look at the dark squares. Black has no weaknesses, but G3 is a point of entry in the future. And that's something that white will need to look out for, because if black can get a queen on G3 and a bishop on D6 and a battery, then the white king could be in danger. But Danya, I understand. I'm just talking about very wishful thinking. But the E3 pawn as well is somewhat vulnerable, and the B4 square is under black's control. So I actually would not just prefer to have the black side. I think black has a great position here, and white needs to be careful.
Humpy Canero played a line of the Queen's Gambit declined, which of course chess.com refers to as the usual, the English opening Anglo-Indian Queen's Knights variation. My cousins, friends, sisters, cousin, uncle, twice removed. And this actually was d4, knight f6, c4, e6, knight f3, d5, knight c3, and h6. I am very familiar with a6, setting up d takes e4. This has been popular for a long time, but h6 is like part of the new trend, right? Just play h3 in any position, and it doesn't actually impact the evaluation.
It's just the nature of closed positions, right? Where you can spend a tempo playing a pawn move on the rim and claiming that, well, it's not like there's going to be some threat against the king or some tactic that you need to be aware of.
And what year do you think h6 was first played?
1883.
That is, you are actually unbelievable. It was played in the
What?
game Berthold English against Adolf Anderssen, Leipzig, 1877.
Oh,
And it was a slightly different move order. It was still very impressive. It was d4, d5, c4, e6, knight c3, h6, knight f3, knight f6. They really were not that dumb or dumb at all in the 19th century. They actually figured a lot of stuff out on their own.
no engine to assist in their calculation, and they still were coming up with lines that have stood the test of time. So that this position, black should be better. How much better is a big question. And Danya, we're being told that Hikaru has played the move Rook E5, and so
Whoa.
he's making he's making progress. And oh,
What do you see?
okay, so Gukesh played Queen
Oh,
D6,
coming,
and then
coming.
Hikaru made a move C3, which may not spoil the advantage, but that's an odd move because your bishop was so perfectly defended on D3. To now remove
Whoa,
that
whoa,
key
whoa, whoa.
defender and
Suddenly
kind
they're
of feels like
playing
you're
bullet.
weakening.
They're like take an hour per player on each move, and suddenly they're rifling out these moves, which I would actually be spending some time on. Queen a3 is already on the board.
What did you make of C3? I understand he was taking away the D4 square from black's pieces, but the bishop on D3 is not nearly as stable as it once
Totally.
was.
Like the downside of this move, right? The cure is worse than the disease here. Queen d4 is not a threat, and Hikaru knows this. I mean, a4, Robert, it actually prevents queen d4 potentially. I think you can just play a5. So it feels like Hikaru is putting a band-aid over a problem that doesn't exist, thereby creating actual problems that may cost him down the line. I'm also shocked that he took this long for rook e5 and this little for c3, a move that's far more committal. Strange occurrences, but they may not actually impact the flow of the game, or
I,
maybe
I
they will.
I do like Gukesh's last move though, because Queen A3 threatens Queen to C1, which then threatens Queen G1 check, and the White King could be in some danger. So White had a big idea of playing A4, A5 that's no longer available, and the Black Queen is about to jump right into the heart of White's position. So H5 is met by Queen C1, and there's a lot to figure out now.
Suddenly, White has to calculate, and let's try to tease out some of these pitfalls that White has to avoid. Let me start with this. Oh, this is scary. Like, White could get checkmated here. This is ridiculous.
Queen G1.
King F3, I think, allows Queen H1, but so does King H3. Let me just show this for players, for people watching, how dangerous this can get. This is not in Hikaru's, daily agenda to get this position based on what he just had. Is this winning
And
now?
there's no. I don't see anything for
D1?
Black though. That's the problem.
What if
Queen
Queen
D1,
D1?
Bishop E2,
Queen D7?
Queen E6, and I thought that White still maintains a healthy advantage, but perhaps the Queen trade does allow Black to gain more hopes.
Okay, what does the third commentator say? Queen D1 check is best, and White has a choice of moves. Yeah, Bishop E2 is among the possibilities, but Black is winning here with Bishop F2. How easy is this to miss? Black wins on the spot here because it threatens mate. Rook G5, check here, and the game is over. You are cornered. Look at this mate. This is gorgeous. What a pattern.
It reminds me of Vaishali against Humpy.
Vaishali against Humpy.
The first round of the event where Vaishali was pressing with Black the whole game and then missed Bishop F8.
I didn't see
You
Bishop
remember that?
F2 at all. I was so fixated on this check, honestly.
Yeah, this is exactly the type of idea that Vaishali missed. Suddenly the bishop gets in with the queen, and there's a checkmate on the table that you can't stop.
The difference, of course, is that Hikaru has an hour on his clock, but he doesn't seem to be using it too well. What's interesting is here King F3 avoids the problem. Because, why? Because Bishop F2 is met with Queen to F7, of course, obviously. Queen takes G3, whoop! Diving back to E2, no more meaningful checks. Bishop C5. And Rook E8, only move to win the game. Check, King D1. The king zigzags its way to B3. And the Rook on F8 will be lost with grievous consequences.
Grievous Vasquez consequences.
Or Count Grievous, right, from Star Wars. F. Stradios. Good reference.
So yeah, I see what you're going for though. Queen f7 is such a lovely tactic that we should always keep on our radar because the back rank is an issue for black to deal with. And don't play Queen f7 in the live board because the queen on a3 defends the f8 square, so black would just be able to pick up that queen.
That is a reasonable point. Sorry, it is General Grievous. I confuse him with Count Dooku. And Duke Countu. It's been a while since I've watched Star Wars.
I haven't seen Star Wars in so many years now.
Yeah, that's palpable. Oh my gosh, I am not the emperor of puns today.
Well, hopefully you find your new groove, and we may have to go to a new game because Hikaru is thinking, spending his time here, and I guess Arjun's also thinking. So not much changing.
Yeah, I mean, Gukesh really trying to go Nero to hero here. Let's take a look at Arjun's game. And this is a big moment in Hikaru's board because h5 needs to be concretely calculated, and you can even lose. We're not exaggerating. The guy literally stumbled into mate. This game, I think, if anything, is almost less interesting. I think it's quite likely to end in peaceful conclusion. But it doesn't feel like Arjun should be on the defensive, and yet he kind of is here. It's weird.
What can white do? I'm trying to figure that out because the d5 pawn is a potential target, but the bishop on d4 has nowhere good to go.
I see. Mate threat, knight g5.
Ooh, that's fun. And then queen slides from a6 to h6 on the yo-yo string and stops the checkmate and hits the knight.
Now, my inclination here would be to play h4, just to establish the knight here and use it as a bargaining chip, trying to induce some weaknesses. I assume you're not playing f6. That would be beneficial to you.
You know what's funny? I was about to blunder. I'd say, oh, queen h5 to go h6 next, but h6 will allow queen h7.
Talk about digging your own grave, which I've been progressively doing with these terrible, terrible jokes. Okay, what does black do here in this position? Now, by the way, it should be pointed out, Robert, just before we go any further, queen to g6. The problem with this move is that actually our old friend makes an appearance. The opposite, rather. The pawn on a7 can be captured, and here b6 I would be very skeptical about.
Right, because d5 falls and white gets all that activity. I think it's too slow for black. Plus, there's background checkmate issues.
So what is the move that Fabi is relying on here? Why not f takes g6 as Dr. BWA? I guess you should ask Gukesh.
So queen h5.
Completely unnecessary.
Yeah, just from the top rope. Queen h5
Bishop
still.
takes
I won't
g7?
play h6. I won't play. What?
That was what I was cooking up earlier. Takes. I want to go rook
Wow.
d5.
Wow. Okay, you're always full of tactics. So
That don't work.
why bishop g4? I guess I have, but is that what saves me?
But bishop g4, even knight e6 here, I think is something that white would sign up for. And sign me up maybe for queen e4.
Yeah, the b7 pawn is loose at the end.
So maybe, I'm sure black has a defense even after bishop takes g7. Something tells me this is not sound. But who knows?
Looks fun though.
Okay. I think we've earned the right to check. Bishop g7 is correct. And it is overwhelming. And here, the only... Okay, f6 is acceptable, but b6, the calm b6 to protect a7. And set up, by the way, very important, the threat of a7, a5. I say threat, not a short-term threat, but in the long run, if the queens get off the board, this is no laughing matter.
It's a really good point, and it's something that we like to talk about, is the material is even, and we keep harping on the presence of opposite colored bishops, but it's also not a symmetrical pawn structure. So white has this extra pawn in the center, the e2 pawn, I guess, and black has this outside... Oh, it's not really the e2 pawn, it's a c3 pawn more so. So it's like a more centralized pawn, and black has the a pawn, but that's very dangerous especially if the queens get traded.
And logically, White's only immediate target is the d5 pawn. He can attack that by dropping the bishop back, but it comes with a very hefty price tag in the form of completely ruined pawn structure. However, it's very hard for black in this position to defend this pawn. You can't move the queen due to queen takes h7. What you can do is either f6 or even queen to g6, which I really like. However, this endgame, the knight sitting on g5 like this, apparently it's equal, and f6 leads to some further complications after rook takes d5, f takes g5, rook takes d7, g takes h4, and actually white is slightly worse here. Queen e4, you need to be very careful in order to hold a draw.
I was going to say, it's not a surprise that white is worse. It's a surprise that white is still surviving. It looks almost tragic at this stage with all of white's pawns in the sights of black's pieces. So, yeah, I would definitely not be going for that.
How is this equal? Okay, anyways. King h1, hg, and king g2 is the top line. I think I saw this in the Title Tuesday game. Just kidding.
Yeah, of course, just putting your king in the corner and then blocking the pawn.
He's played it. This is on the board. Just
Wow.
kidding. He's played knight g5.
No, I knew you were kidding about the entire variation, but knight g5. So queen h6, you're saying h4, just protecting the knight over there. And b6 was the engine's recommendation. That's difficult.
I think queen h6 is borderline forced. And Arjun could drop his knight back to f3. That is not impossible, and I think that keeps equality. But knowing Arjun and knowing his level of ambition, especially in light of yesterday's tragic loss, I think h4 is reasonable to expect from him.
It looks aggressive. It looks strong. You're protecting your knight, which is trying to help deliver a checkmate. So yeah, I'm buying that. I think that it's a mixed bag. For now, it looks like white has a bit of an initiative, but I really like what you said, Daniel. b6, a5 for black at the right moment, and that can be really dangerous for white to deal with because white doesn't have that many pieces remaining, and outside passed pawns are notoriously difficult to stop.
Why no eval bar on the right board? Because the eval bar is on the left board, the live board, folks.
People want the eval bar everywhere.
I don't want the number, though, on top of the eval bar because I don't think people can see it, and it's also annoying me. Is that removable?
I have no idea.
Settings. Let's see. Analysis. Show move classification on the board, but okay. Okay, finding something in settings that you actually need to find is, you know how it is.
I'm guessing you can't turn that off, but that is interesting because I do think that the number, it doesn't mean a lot to plenty of people anyway. Like,
yeah,
there's
you want a snapshot, right? Like you want an approximation. That's the point of the eval bar.
Right, and if somebody's like plus 0.8, that position actually could have more chance to win than a position that's plus 1.5 where there's a thin line. So it doesn't really estimate the chances a player is going to win.
It's similar to like in math where you have a bar graph, and then on top of the bar graph you have the number, so it defeats the whole purpose of a pictorial representation. Might as well just have the engine assessment.
Because we like pictures, okay?
Yeah, exactly. That's why we have an eval bar, and I'm just gonna literally take a piece of white out and just remove the number. It's like that Mr. Bean episode in the library. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I don't know that episode, but obviously I know Mr. Bean.
Like he takes a book out, Queen H6 on the board, like an ancient antique book out in the library, and then he sneezes on it by accident, just like in the Bean movie. And then he obviously the book is damaged, and he starts to apply whiteout, and then he ruins the whole book, and then he has to find a way out of the library.
Sounds like some typical Mr. Bean shenanigan singular.
Mr. Bean.
How about Mr. Nakamura?
Mr. Nakamura has made a move.
He has made a single move, king to h3, which is a very good one, I might add.
Prophylaxis.
We're getting to that part of the day where it's like a lull in the action. Like players are using their remaining time. The positions, some of them look very level. Others, there's still plenty of potential This one, it's been one-sided since Gukesh's error, and I think Hikaru actually has handled this quite nicely. The move c3, which was off my radar completely, and then following up with king h3, it makes a lot of sense. It's just taking away as many squares from black's pieces as possible.
Let me grab the Staunton book. Go on, keep talking.
Okay, in your little house of Staunton, which is your bookshelf. I can't wait to see what you're going to show all of us.
There we go.
Is it a similar position? Is it? I'm now curious, Danya.
No, I mean, I was just going to continue the story of this Staunton Sandamant match and give a few examples of how they went after each other.
I forgot about that story already.
Yeah, because it was a particularly memorable one. But I need like a second or so just to find the appropriate article. What is the most exciting? Is it this one? I mean, we should keep an eye on the Aragaisi game, but I think it's likely to end in a draw.
We will have Armageddon hopefully soon between Anna Muzichuk and Lei Tingzhe, and Anna entered the day in first place. So that should... Oh, no, June, apologies, was in first. She caught up thanks to her classical win. But Anna needs every half point in Armageddon she can get.
It's just so funny how this drama is the drama in the chess world. This is 1844. This is the original from 1844. Oh my gosh. The how do I put it in 19th century slang? The glazing of Staunton in this magazine, which of course Staunton edited, so he only permitted articles that, let's say, were quite favorable to him. So like the very first article is by his best friend. Sorry, before that, there's an article from someone who calls himself a tyro, which means beginner. That was an SAT word for me, actually. Just to give you a sense, this is the letter to the editor. Okay, so he asks about the Evans Gambit, blah, blah, blah. In playing over the recent games between Mr. Saint-Amant and Mr. Staunton, it is impossible not to observe the omen of defeat in Saint-Amant by his retiring or taking 2 moves with 1 piece to arrive at a certain spot, while his indefatigable and active opponent always at 1 move reaches the right place. What an astute observation, and never has to retire. Yeah, Hikaru needs to read this. I allude, of course, to certain openings, as when the board is cleared, no piece can be said to retire. I think I'm retired of reading this. Wow.
I was waiting to see where that one went, and I lost my concentration somewhere midway.
Then there's an article by Harry Wilson, one of Staunton's best friend, and he accompanied Staunton to Paris to the match. The umpire in the great chess match. And one of the sentences reads, Mr. Saint-Amant well knows that in laborious practice and study, his British adversary is to him but a baby, and but a few years since he would have received from him the odds of a rook. Such excuses are absurd. Do not attempt to alloy or detract from genius by such miserable shifts. And it's like 100 pages of this.
These fighting words are hilarious.
Oh, yeah, this is so much of this.
All of the, just like the little pamphlets that they would hand around, and how you read these stories where they're just in like analyses is where they're talking trash.
Also, I can totally relate because Staunton talks later about how annoying it is that he has to travel to Paris because Saint-Amant challenges him to a rematch. And Staunton says, well, obviously we should play in London because I traveled to Paris, and undertook a 2-week journey that would now take like 10 minutes. And obviously traveling in the 19th century was really annoying. And people often ask, like, did everybody living at a certain time, did they just adapt? Like, absolutely not. Like, everybody understood that traveling was crap. But a little bit later, last sentence is of this article by Staunton's friend is, Mr. Saint-Amant, after putting his queen en prise to draw the game, had the unexpected good fortune to win it because his antagonist refused to draw by taking the offered piece. How nice of Staunton to let his opponent win despite a queen blunder.
That's the... if that was intentional, is that reading that correctly?
Intentional, yeah. And then he says, I do trust that Mr. Staunton will not again be persuaded to visit Paris upon terms so disadvantageous as on the late occasion. Blah, blah, blah.
I love that. I just prefer to lose the game than make a draw.
And there was a prize fund, so he was playing with some cash. Okay, what do we have going on? Oh, he's went back to G2. Look at this.
Yeah, they've repeated the position. the queen went to d6, the king went back to g2. Now the queen's back on a3.
Armageddon
And so,
started
has it?
in the
Oh,
women's.
yes, it has. Yes, Anna Musichuk and Lei Tingzhe.
Okay. In the meantime, I'm going to pull that up here. We're going to have 600 more Armageddons, so it's all good.
We love a good Armageddon.
We do. I'm gonna put the
And
book back.
Donna,
Keep talking.
these types of positions where there's a backward c pawn that black is saddled with for the long term. I feel like it's more fun to play this for white, but if black can find a way out, say like bishop to b4 to kick the rook away, it should not be worse for black. But you look at a couple things: the backward c pawn, the extra pawn on the king side for white, and the potential of an attack with the bishop on c2 and the knight on f3 and the rook already lifted.
That's a nice move by Lei Tingzhe, who has struggled in the Armageddon, but obviously off to a good start here.
Yeah, but Anna's off to a really good start on the clock. Like she has nearly 9 minutes. The position remains very complicated, and wow, that's a fantastic move. C5, excuse me. D takes c5 is met by pawn to b4, removing the one guard of this c5 pawn.
I'm keeping an eye on the Hikaru game because he's obviously not going to repeat 3 times, folks. Everybody relax, but he is suddenly in a situation where some accuracy is required, but no move yet. C5. Lei Tingzhe, I think the biggest struggle in the Armageddon was the time scrambles. Like every game so far has gone into a time scramble, and I think she hasn't done as good of a job as her opponents at keeping her nerve. I think she's trying to make that adjustment here, taking the fight to Anna Musichuk and trying to really clarify the game before things get down to that frantic, chaotic scramble.
Yeah, it's a really well played start for Lei Tingzhe, and the one thing she needs to keep an eye on is Queen D2, Queen H6, and a mating attack against the Black King. But with these pawn advances and now a trade on C5, the C file opens up, and that's exactly what you need to counter any sort of attack. You need play in the center, you need play on the other flank, and down to the bishop on C2, it's biting on granite, as you like to say, staring right into the G6 pawn, which is ultra well defended.
There's a lot to calculate for Anna. She has to decide, does she play rook to D3 or rook to E3? The downside of the latter move is that it allows bishop takes C5 with tempo, and I don't think that white can effectively establish a knight on D4, so she does sidestep that with rook to D3. She can now play queen to D2 if she wants to, but king to G7, Robert, the lack of a dark squared bishop here, it's killer for white's attacking chances. They are so greatly diminished because of the uncontested control that black has over the dark squares on the queen side and on the king side.
Yeah, white's going to have to throw the H-pawn Alpha Zero style at some point, maybe even now in the current position. But I do like Queen D2, Rook D1, Bishop B1 can always be played and try to put a knight on D4. I'm giving white all these free moves, and black isn't going to sit and do nothing. But the bishop on E6, Danya has to sit there because the D5 pawn is loose. So there are some things for both players to figure out. But after Queen to D2 was just played here, I think that for Lei Tingzhe, she just can't leave side of the queen side, king side, excuse me. Can't also leave side of the b4 pawn, but queen h6 at the right moment could hurt. But for now, she has everything covered.
Again, the dark squares. Queen h6. Black probably is spoiled for choice. I wouldn't be surprised at a move like f7, f6. The side with the bishop pair typically benefits from the board opening up. Tack on the fact that black also has a huge space advantage. White has a weak back rank, and there's all these tactical properties of the position waiting to be exploited. I'm also looking in the longer run at this pawn on a3, Robert. It's not just important in an endgame. Black's queen could land on b2, and that could be a headache in the middle game.
Yeah, in some end games, there might be a sacrifice on b3 to spring free an outside passer. So many deep ideas that we will continue to discuss. But at the moment, Anna Musichuk now barely ahead on time. The time advantage has been cut to less than a minute, and she's just trying to find an idea here. H4, we mentioned before, I think no matter what, black can play f6, almost pre-movable.
And Anna's move just 3 moves ago, b3, is such an automatic reaction. All of us can relate to this. Maybe she should have kept this square at all costs for the bishop, because once the square is taken away from the bishop on c2, that bishop has nowhere to go. The pieces are stumbling over each other. The only thing you can do is tuck this bishop back to b1, which opens up another line of fire down the c-file. Only black can benefit from that. White isn't Zugzwang.
There's no easy moves. She does go queen h6. Your f6 move down. It has to be played, screaming to be played. It does
Oh
weaken
yeah.
some control, namely a bishop takes g6 idea that black will have to look out for. But it does open up key files for black's pieces, and Lei Jie only needs a draw.
Bishop e7. Is that a bad alternative? Because you can't go knight d4 there due to bishop g5. Is white going to go h4 in response?
Probably. Just throw that forward. Knight g5 is what you're trying to line up. And that does start to look like an initiative, but the pin on the c file, Danya, also very annoying.
I think black has a pleasant choice here. But in Lei Jie's case, it's an unpleasant choice because you start agonizing over playing the perfect move. This, of course, whatever Lei Jie does, she has to avoid letting this get chaotic.
Agreed. And I'm just trying to look at the various games, and this one is in the most time troubled because it's Armageddon. White started with 10 minutes, black with 7. Black wins with a draw. And Donna, we're seeing moves come in here after. Oh, no, sorry, no moves here for Anna Musichuk. It was a different game that just had a move. But I'm worried about the clock for black in particular because white does have an initiative and black needs to be very careful. F6 in the near future will run into knight d4 and a big attack.
Comparison is amazing how it distorts, or sometimes the opposite, your perception of how much time you have. Like after a 3-minute session that's happened for the past 30 hours, you give me 4 minutes and 8 seconds. I'm like, that is a great luxury. But having just played a classical game, this feels like acute time pressure. Rook back to d1 and a Musichuk opening up a pathway toward a potential sacrifice, which is never going to happen as long as black keeps the integrity of this pawn structure. Bishop to g4, Robert. Would that force some sort of exchanges?
Is there bishop e4 as a response to that? I'm not really sure how to evaluate. The queen on h6 does defend that rook on c1.
Then I would say rook takes c1 and d takes e4.
Nice.
Bishop g5 at the end.
Queen sack because the first rank is a problem for white. I think that's a great decision.
And another problem, bishop g4, queen f4. I'm not going to put this on the board, folks. Well, actually, I will. Oh, I won't. Because Lei Jie will put a different move on the board, and there will be no queen left on the board if rook takes f3 and bishop g5 is allowed.
Uh-oh. The white queen trap. That's a surprising queen trap, but I don't think that enemy's just going to allow it. Because rook takes f3 in general seems obvious with the bishop g5 follow-up. Even if it didn't with the queen, it would give black the exchange right back.
Queen back to f4 is an option, but then f6 becomes available again. Queen to b6. Black has easy ways to improve. Anna Musichuk, very well aware of the threat. I wouldn't rule out rook takes f3 anyway, but I absolutely would not do that given the circumstances.
Yeah, white created material imbalance.
Exactly.
I mean, black is doing very well right now and also doesn't have that much time. So as soon as you sacrifice an exchange and you're down a minute, you're going to have a lot to work out. So here, Danya, I feel like I would try to make a move like queen c7 followed by rook c8 work. I understand that white could play h5 and go for the black king, but the bishop on c2 is loose and you're going to put maximum pressure down the c file.
That's what I always learned from you. The conceptual moves, I would be pining for something more concrete like bishop g4. That would be my choice probably in a blitz game. But obviously, it's also very weakening. The d5 pawn becomes vulnerable. Taking on f3 doesn't necessarily achieve the kind of change in the position that you wanted to achieve. She has to. I know we keep repeating this, but I keep watching her clock tick down. Still plenty of times. 2 minutes is plenty. I don't like... No, horrible move.
Whoa.
F4, bishop h4, f4.
No, we were talking about this, and it's not going to work out. F4 also down to king g2, rook h1, checkmate down the h file.
F4 is the only move here, and I put this in her mind. I take responsibility, but it doesn't even matter, Robert. Even if I didn't have F4, you just don't do this in an Armageddon game because it hands your opponent exactly the kind of imbalance that she's been looking for all game long.
What other moves even come to mind? Bishop g5 does not trap the queen. The queen can slide back to h2, but why would you want a passive queen like that? F4 is played. Danya, I mean, isn't the attack just straightforward now?
It's just hard. I mean, it's just seppuku. It's just unbelievable because I wonder what she expected. Maybe queen back to e3, which still is good for white. Yeah, this is unreal. And the thought just crossed my mind briefly. Once I saw f4, it just, you toss it away.
I don't even see a follow-up.
She took an entire minute to self-destruct here, and now she's lost on the board and on the clock.
and all of white's pieces have been freed up. King g2, rook h1, move your bishop off of c2, you take control of the c file. There are all sorts of sacrifices that black needs to keep an eye on. This is just lost.
Uncharacteristic for the Women's World Champion challenger, who is such a good tactical player when she's in her usual form. But some of these howlers in the Armageddon, especially in the classical portion against Sarah Kadem, this is a forgettable event, and Lei Ting Jie has nothing left to do but to stare at her position in astonishment. How did this happen? An f5, an attempt.
A move that kind of needed to be played, but now move your bishop. I would say bishop d3,
Yeah.
followed by rook c6, and the black king is getting hunted.
King to g2, I think she intends something like d4. But even that doesn't threaten anything. Bishop d3, your idea, seems totally devastating.
There's just nothing against the white king. And rook f7 play. That's a good move. Black down to 1 minute 14 seconds. She has 12 moves to make before getting 1 second bonus time with each turn played. But Danya, she's losing on the clock. She's losing on the board. And I guess if she gets her bishop back around, what she's going for, she may have a chance to survive the initial wave of attack.
The position remains very tactical. Anna's king is exposed. A lot of undefended pieces, undefended squares. Anything can happen. We know this from watching as much Armageddon as we've had in our lifetimes. We've watched a lifetime of Armageddons just in this tournament, and we're always in for some twists and turns. d4, Robert, can still be met with rook takes e6. Oh, e6?
E6 is really nice here. You're hitting the bishop on d7 and that rook on f7, and you want to take. H7 will fall. But done e6, bishop takes c6, ef, king f7. I feel like there are some chances there for black on that light square diagonal.
King has to walk up to f6, and somehow it dodges. White needs to win.
Ooh. Yeah, and then on move 33, d4 is automatic. I mean, you could pre-move that almost.
Yeah, don't play bishop c4 and allow d takes c4 check. Rook to e1 would be my choice.
Rook e1, d4
F3.
check anyway. Okay, and black can... She starts with f3.
I don't see a move for black here. I mean, 40 seconds, it would take a one-move blunder at this point for Anna. Just
Yeah.
physically, it's hard to make the moves. Bishop c5, queen
Yeah.
h4 drops the queen.
Yeah, also d4 for black always opens up that new diagonal. Bishop c4, queen f7 mate is on the agenda. So queen d6 played rook e1 seems automatic.
Oh, yeah. Rook h1, queen f4. That is exactly... Yeah, you need to prevent queen f4. She gives a check. But king f7, rook h1, exactly what you don't want to do unless you actually have traced the line to its conclusion.
Right, because rook h1 threatens rook h7, but queen takes f4. The black king will run to e6, maybe wrap back around to d7 or d6.
Queen c8, that's also winning, actually.
You better be 100% sure. You know what the good news is, Danya? That Musichek has over 2 minutes to calculate it.
Yeah. Not quite as much time as Hikaru has to enjoy his position, but it is plenty. Rook e1, rook h1. Probably other moves as well. Bishop c4, queen f4, rook d5 maybe, but okay.
You're having a little too much fun there, but it's an interesting variation. King e6. So it doesn't even take on f4 yet.
Queen c8. And
Queen
g8.
c8. That's nasty. That's really, really nice.
I mean, you just prevent like the escape. Bishop a6 even, just to prevent king d7 looks good, and then bishop c8, the best move in chess.
I think bishop a6 is the best move because queen c8, king f6, like can go rook h7 there and go for mate, but queen takes f4 still possible after rook h7.
Wait, did Daniel saw a good move? Rook h7 here and queen f4, queen c6, like king g5.
No, but these are the type of games that get out of hand because you go queen c2 back, stopping the first check, then bishop d6 for black. You know what I'm saying? Like suddenly there's a potential for an attack for black.
Yeah, but 7 seconds now. She make 2 more moves, and then you get only a 1 second increment. No, she's not. If she pulls this off, I don't know what I'm going to do, but she's finding ways. She's 1 move away from the increment, so she's not going to lose on time. Queen g3 and queen d2 are threatened.
How do you stop it? Because queen c2 allows queen g3.
Anna,
King f.
let me tell you, 45 seconds for Anna feels like 1 second with how she's feeling right now, which is like, WTF? How do I get out of the checks? You start repeating the same question to yourself? Holy smokes. Wait, what's the move here?
Okay, so queen g3. So it's just a single check. Maybe bishop e2.
She plays
She
it.
played it. Yeah,
What
she
a
just took
move.
away the follow up.
Still
And the game
going.
continues.
Queen takes d5. Black is not threatening anything.
Yeah, Queen D5 is good. Unless that black bishop could get to E3 in one turn, and even there would be too many checks
Also,
against it.
Queen c1 and
Black
Queen e1 looks. Oh, Rook h1 is a killer.
and then Rook G1. That's game.
Great job by Anna to calm herself down. She flirted there with disaster briefly, but the Ukrainian Grandmaster, she will not let her experience fail her. Another head-scratching Armageddon loss for Lei Ting-Jie. She cannot catch a break in the Armageddon.
Wow, what a I can't call it topsy-turvy because it actually seemed like black was better, and then immediately white capitalized on Lei Ching-Ji's mistake of the exchange sacrifice, and that was the game. So thank you, Esbero. Thanks, everybody. We see you in chat with the subs and the donations, so thank you very, very much. But Danya, where to? Are we back to Hikaru? Are we going to Fabi? Is there any
Yeah.
action?
Okay, so Ju and June has been... I don't know how they've been dragging that game out for as long as they have, but it's a dead draw. Just get to the Armageddon, please. We will bring that to you when it happens. The most interesting position is this one. Hikaru has made a decision which is not h5. And Fabi is actually, I think, very much in the driver's seat against Arjun. Very much so.
Fabi's pieces just look so healthily placed, and even though Fabi's been dealing with an isolated pawn, his activity around that pawn would make Nimzovich proud. So should we stay with Hikaru on the big board as well?
How about a
And-
two-board view, maybe?
Sure, let's do it.
On the big board, I'm going to put Hikaru. And on the small board, I'm going to put Arjun versus Caruana. I don't think anybody complains when we have more than one game up.
Sounds good. And it's funny because Hikaru spent a lot of time and Gukesh down to under 14 minutes, but very little has changed over the last few turns.
I'm just going to very quickly resize the board here. I'm going to put the eval bar up on both boards. Remember, we're now covering two different games. We will have a separate scene for this eventually. Remember, we are tyros at well, I am a tyro at most things, including producing.
You are a baller, is what you are.
Aw. And you are too sweet. Okay, how do I do this? So eval bar in the Hikaru, evil bar in the Hikaru game.
You got this. I have faith in you.
Let me just
I'm just trying to figure out, like, can Hikaru just play h5? Like, we've been waiting for this move forever, and h5 going for checkmate on h7 feels like a pretty smart play.
sorry, just a moment.
Don't worry.
So this one, we want the eval bar on. Yeah, except it's pretty meaningless because it's too low depth, but still it gives us a general sense of, like, you know, if a blunder happens or something. And I think we're good. Just need to bring this down.
Some good questions that are also being answered precisely in chat about Hikaru playing Rook H5, which is a very nice idea. Unfortunately, it's a clear threat. Like the threat is so obvious that Gukesh will know how to stave off the checkmating attack. So Rook H5 threatens Queen takes G6, and hopes, oh no, my Rook, you take the Rook, but H7 would drop with checkmate. So instead, Adani, I think the H
Yeah, I'm
file.
sorry.
got
I'm
squeezed
trying
out.
to like work the eval bar into the capture, and it's just annoying me.
I'm sorry,
Okay,
my
how about
friend.
this?
Ooh,
this look good?
now we're talking. Yeah.
King to G2 back again. I mean, Hikaru keeps shuffling his king between H3 and G2. Now it's Gukesh's move. Now we have both boards up with the eval bar, so we can follow everything as it happens. And of course, Ju and June will start her Armageddon game just when I finish setting this up.
Well, there was a Queen B6 play, but people were asking about Rook H5, and I was just saying how it's a very obvious threat. Like if you take the Rook, you get checkmate on H7. If you do nothing, White will line up Queen takes G6. That's the whole point of Rook H5, to pin that G6 pawn. But unfortunately, Rook H5 can be met by a number of moves, including King to G8, just to step out of the way.
Yeah, that's such an interesting point. King G8 does walk into a
Oh.
bunch of these checks.
Wait, I blundered that. Queen D5 is nice for White.
Oh,
there.
and Rook H7? No. Oh, just bishop hangs, yeah.
Bishop's hanging.
No, but the Rook will be hanging.
No, but Rook on F8's hanging as well.
Oh my gosh. Me no calculate well.
Too much effort. I don't want to calculate either.
Okay, well, Hikaru has to calculate. because he's down to 41 minutes to 13. This was an hour advantage. It's halved. Gukesh, 2 comeback wins in a row. So he has that small confidence boost. I say small just because of how hopeless this looks when you take into account all the factors in the position. Wait a second. What if h5? Can we just go back to this move? What's the problem with it?
I've been wondering about that for a long time.
I can't. I have 2 actually. Like while you were talking, I was like, can I come up with a move here? Like h5. What is black's move?
Like bishop d6, maybe?
Rook e6.
Queen b.
By the way, I can put this on the board. Rook b5 also. Yeah, this is over. Rook b5 would be game. Just
So
don't blunder.
Queen b2 first, so that way I don't, get my queen trapped.
Slide the queen in before the doors close. King h3, let's say.
Bishop d6 now, so I don't hang a piece.
And if I play rook to e8, it doesn't threaten a back rank mate because the black rook is defended. It gives black a tempo.
Yeah, queen takes a2 is my hope.
It's annoying. Yeah, it's annoying. Actually, this is a little annoying. So what if I play like rook g5? What if I stay on the 5th rank? But what's the
Still
threat?
still queen takes a2.
Yeah, queen a2. And I just want to illustrate to people that if you get a position like this, black can play h6. And I see that Yalbar is saying that black is winning, but you still have to actually find the mate here. I'm thinking like rook h5 and rook takes h6 is going to work, probably even here. And now there's rook h6 is a huge threat. Let me just show why. Takes, check. How sexy would this be? Now, if we saw something like this on the board, which we haven't, because Hikaru is still thinking after queen b6.
Well, Danya, instead of queen d4, I think g7, queen g6 first, and then queen h7 mate was there.
I'm sorry?
Instead of queen d4 check after the rook sack,
Yeah.
g7, king g7, queen g6.
Oh, yeah. Beautiful. Boom. That's crucial. Otherwise, white definitely wouldn't win.
Yeah, you force the king back to the corner and then deliver that checkmate with the battery. So, I mean, the black king is being hunted, but I see your general point that even after h takes g6 in plenty of positions, black says, okay, you want a pawn, I'll play h6, close that side of the board down, and try to then play on the other flank. But, still, Gukesh is just kind of shuffling his pieces, doing the best he can.
I'm going to repeat what I said in the sort of preliminary phase of that comeback against Magnus, which feels like it was a year ago. It was the day before yesterday, Robert. It's like when positions like this are screwed, when the miracle actually happens and you go back and you trace the origins of it, it's rarely a blunder at the top level. Like there is a blunder sometimes at the end, like Magnus's like knight e2 check, right? But anybody who's actually watched the game understands that the conditions that created that blunder were put into place with many inaccuracies earlier in the game. So typically what tends to happen is you start with moves that make the win a little bit harder and a little bit more, the path a little bit more narrow, and eventually the time advantage evaporates, you get nervous, and then something big happens. So Hikaru wants to avoid a situation where he needs to start being ultra precise.
And especially because he's even been to the confessional apparently and talked about how he should be winning. Then you start thinking, where do I prove the win? Why is it so difficult? Can I still win? And even when maybe you need to hit the brake, you don't actually do so because you're so focused on getting the job done. So you said rook h5. Has that been played?
Well, no,
or
it's
that's
just my YouTube chat is really hoping to see this move. Maybe I don't know what the best move is, like at a high depth. What does like Sese give?
Well, rook h5 seemed good just because the king can't move to g8. So what is black's response?
No, we didn't dismiss rook h5. It's just that you have to be careful about making such a move just because it's a fancy move. King h3 on the board. Careful now. You're in like, if you play too many times king g2, king h3, your friendly neighborhood tournament arbiter might knock on the door.
They have been going back and forth a little bit. The white queen is on e4 now rather than c4, so that's one important wrinkle. And done at h5, is it finally time for that move, or is he going to play something else like king g2 again?
I made this analogy yesterday to like the diver standing for the first time, about to jump into the pool, and you just can't quite find the moment to do it. You got to do it.
Yeah, let's go spelunking. Let's dive right into the position. But Donna, he's not doing it. So what do you think Hikaru is worried about? I mean, it is a move that you can't take back, any kind of forward pawn push. So what is the drawback that he might be seeing or seeing ghost about?
Well, whatever the drawback, he's going to give Gukesh the drawback if he goes king, if he goes back to G2. So Mikhail tells Deep Dark Cave where 2 + 2 = 5. Of course, it was a Deep Dark Forest. Honestly, only black is in the Deep Dark Forest. White is very much enjoying his... I don't even know if Hikaru's enjoying himself anymore. It felt that way earlier. Something tells me he hasn't been in the confessional booth for a couple of moves now. So I just have a... I don't know, I have a feeling that he's like taking this more seriously now.
He's locked in, trying to find the way forward because he's been pressing, but Gukesh is hanging in there just long enough, and the time advantage should be meaningful. And down on the other board, there is a big time advantage for Arjun-Caruana, but Fabiano's played great chess, great defense, and now with the black pieces, we can see that the engine slightly prefers his position, but with the opposite colored bishops, maybe it's nothing too major.
Just one more comment about Gukesh. He kind of reminds me in some ways of Tigran Petrosian. Of course, Tigran Vartanovich Petrosian, the former, the ex-world champion. In the sense that Petrosian had stretches like of his career where he'd play a bunch of games that are not necessarily pleasing to the eye, and he'd make a blunder here and there. He blundered a queen in one move against Bronstein, but he commanded complete and total respect from the chess world. Partially it was because of his just magical ability to stage one comeback after another, to not just draw, but to win very often positions in which other players would have given winning hopes up a long time ago. So Gukesh has won 2 lost positions in a row, and he's cut down Hikaru's time advantage to 20 minutes. There's definitely still some juice left to squeeze there on both boards.
Oh, we have Armageddon, we have Vaishali, and wait, what's going on? Or maybe we don't?
Wait, how is there Armageddon already? Like, that game was...
No. There's a mistake going on because I clicked on it and then it's a draw, and then the game just went through from start to finish as the other game. So clearly there was some sort of relay error. Oh, now it's back in the starting position. I don't know if that means they're actually going to begin, but something weird just happened.
Complete lack of consistency with the time gap between when their classical game finishes and the Armageddon starts makes it so hard to even have a sense of when when they're underway.
Oof. By the way, Humpy Cunero has a big advantage right now against Sarah Kadem. We saw some weak dark squares, and they're only getting weaker, and Humpy is getting stronger as the time ticks lower. She has an 8-minute lead on the clock. She has a sizable advantage on the board, and it'll be a very important win for her. And I think Armageddon now is live. Oh, no, I think this might be another issue.
Jeez. That's no comment, but wait, just one last question about Hikaru. Sorry to keep distracting people's attention. What is Black's intended response to H5?
I don't know, man. Like Queen D7.
I'm caving. I'm going to turn Mr. Stockfish on. Stockfish doesn't have an answer, actually. It's just winning. I don't know what's going on with Hikaru. Is he just like enjoying this moment? Is he being... I think he doesn't like something. Queen D7 check is the top move. King H2. And then bishop to D6. There is a trap, though. You want to hear about
What's
it?
the trap?
The trap is here you have to go rook to E6. If you go rook to D5, okay, that gives up the E file. If you go king to G2 instead of king to H2 after bishop D6, okay, this is getting kind of complicated. With rook E6, rook F6, for some reason, king H2 was more precise. But here you might even have to trade rooks, and maybe Hikaru doesn't like, from a distance, a position like this. Like with the engine, it's obvious that it's winning, but maybe he doesn't want to trade rooks. That wasn't in his plans. So,
is this easily winning because the black king can't get out? So if a queen trade happens, that's going to be a draw, or does white win?
It's much less convincing to my eyes than the position of the rooks on the board because of the prospect of perpetual check. That is a really scary concept, even though white is winning with best play.
I'm with you. I'm just wondering there, though, if the queens get traded, like let's say, I don't even know how to force that off the board, but get the queens off.
That's winning.
Bishop C, it's winning, right?
Yeah, it's definitely winning, I think, with the queens off. Or not. It's a draw? Bishop C4, bishop F6 is the problem. Yeah,
okay, but don't lose this. don't lose the C pawn. I guess that was the
But
question.
Hikaru wouldn't trade. I don't think he'd trade. I mean, I don't even know if we'll reach this position, so I guess we should just wait for moves.
Yep, and we're seeing moves, by the way. In the other game, it looks like Fabiano has captured the E2 pawn after Arjun captured on B6, opposite colored bishops, even material.
H5 has been played.
Ah, he just wanted us to savor, or he wanted to savor it, and he wanted us to be patient.
Now that the real commentary team has finally shown what Hikaru is about to do, it is now safe to do it.
I'm still waiting for this Armageddon game. I'm just confused to know if chat can keep us up to date with when that may happen, because it seems like they're populating the game and then the time is ticking, but it's not actually starting.
God, if I see any more opposite colored bishops tomorrow, I might throw up. We got our
No more
fill.
of these. Yeah, we've had some. Yesterday as well, we had the Fabi game against Wei Yi, opposite colored bishops.
What the heck is an Agad It's like an what is a Gukesh? Oh, saw another Gukesh there.
What is a Danya?
Isn't there a name for it's like a metonym or something where you refer to type of object
Yes.
by I don't know. I'm too tired to do definitions.
Yes. No, well, a menem is like, wait, it's not a, it wouldn't be a Gukesh. It'd be more like, is that like when Wall Street takes the place like the whole financial industry?
Oh,
It's like
yeah,
a word
yeah.
used to
Very good.
represent.
Like Washington to represent like I was gonna say like bad, but politics.
Um, now you're just expanding chat's vocabulary right now.
Gridlock, and the walls are closing in. Okay, can we have a consensus on? I don't even know what we're gonna have a consensus on. I think a draw is likeliest in Arjun versus Fabi. If the time situation were flipped, I think Black would have winning chances there. But somehow I don't see Fabi setting up a Lolly's mate. Lolly's mate.
No, I think that that game should be a draw. So we'll
Omega
see
Lolly.
if that's Omega Lolly. That's a good one. You can make it up. Omega Lolly's mate.
Yeah, I'm gonna beta test that way of talking.
So if I'm seeing this correctly, what does that say? zero point 0.1 better for Fabi?
That's all Greek to me. Yeah, it is 0.1 better for Fabi.
It does look better for Black, but there's nothing that looks too scary for White to deal with.
What is White's move there? Like Bishop. God, this. Why does it feel like every move they're thinking for like an hour? Bishop B3, Bishop F3 is what he's worried about. But what actually is White's roadmap toward trading off some pieces and making sure that the king can sleep peacefully?
Well, let's say White does nothing, like Bishop A7 or something.
That's exactly what he's doing. He's doing nothing, not moving. Bishop A7, you're saying? By the way, look at Queen D7 and Bishop D6 is on the board. We actually predicted, well, Stockfish predicted the course of events. I'm a glorified move enterer. What if I go... No, I can't go G5. D4. Maybe like Rook to E5 or like Rook to E4 can be considered. And these types of ideas, the storm clouds could start to gather. I feel like White has to keep the bishop on the square such that it can interfere with the rook if necessary.
I see what you're saying, that there could be an attack brewing against the White King, and White does need to be a bit careful, but I guess even the engine says that it requires some help from the opponent.
He has a good phrase that I've seen in chess books. Black won, but only with strict cooperation from the opponent. Although the eval bar is rising a little bit, there is no clear path, I think, to equality, to forcing a draw immediately. Maybe bishop back to E3, bishop to F3, and bishop to F4. But even with the rooks off the board, there is still enough firepower to set up an attack on the light squares.
I'm with you.
Love this for Arjun. I feel like it's going to be a turbulent, flight to draw land.
Well, the clock situation were reversed, we'd be talking about some real winning chances for Fabi. He's still, can outplay his opponent, but his pieces are also a bit pinned and awkward. So, Fabi better, down 15 minutes. Hikaru almost winning, up 14 minutes. And now the question is, we saw Bishop D6. You said Rook D5 was incorrect because of Rook to E8, right?
Oh, yeah. Sorry. When you say opposite-colored bishops, I'm like, both games look the same to me. Which move is wrong because of...
You said Rook D5 for Hikaru on the big board.
Is wrong because of Rook E8. Because it gives up the E file, and that's a big asset.
And Rook E6, there's Rook F6? Is that what we were talking about?
That is exactly what we were talking about. And potentially Hikaru, this is my theory. It can't be a coincidence that he's thinking for this long. He would have made a move if he felt confident. I think that something is scaring him, and we know that it's winning because we see the eval bar, but he's gone down some very long path in his mind, and he started to feel that sense of doubt. Maybe this isn't as winning as I thought it was.
If we can make a couple moves in the Hikaru board, because I can see he plays Rook E6. Like if Black plays Rook F6, and you trade on F6 there.
Take on G6?
Right? Is there, you just have to think, does Queen, there's no Queen,
H6?
Queen G6?
Black gets away
No
with
way.
H6, and G7 check looks like it ends the game. It doesn't. Queen takes G7, and Black holds on. You don't have any effective entry points because Black can surround the king with this defensive cocoon.
So this is why Hikaru is paused. He doesn't want to get into this kind of rookless position. And Don, that's a...
Rook F6 on the board. This is another reason, by the way, sorry, Robert, to cut you off, that White doesn't have the forced win because G8 is protected by Black's queen, and Black might build a fortress here. Hikaru does. He does give the check on E8. That's a big move.
So he's keeping an attack going. Rook F8 here. The rooks are going to have to come off the board. And what's the big difference?
Well, the difference is...
Oh, Queen A8, we were talking about this, where you just keep this pin going.
Yes, Black is more paralyzed and has less mobility with his queen than he would in the Rook takes F6 case. Now, Gukesh might play Bishop F8 here. We didn't talk about that move. I'm assuming it loses. I don't know why. Or why exactly.
Queen A8.
Ooh. King G8, Bishop C4. The light squares will just end you. Right. No, I mean, this is still going to take such a Herculean effort, even in the best of scenarios.
You did make that Nero to Hero reference before, so now when you said Herculean, I've just got Zero to Hero stuck in my head, so thank you for that, Danya.
No. I'm going to have some more Medusas to slay, it seems.
Oh, yeah. You have seen Hercules, I take it.
No.
What?
Is that even a movie? That's a city. I mean, when you say Hercules, I think of the city. It's actually a city in the Bay Area that's pretty obscure.
So that's what you think about?
Yeah. I mean, I'm from the Bay Area. It's like the least known place in the entire Bay Area. There's a little town called Hercules, like near Berkeley, right on the fringes.
You are the only, even the people from Hercules still think of...
Yeah, there's half a person from Hercules, and he's probably not watching our broadcast. Well...
No, but I'm saying even those people who are from there, they think of the mythological character, obviously, and they think of the movie. They don't think of their own city or town or whatever you're talking about.
Alert, alert, alert. Bishop F8 has been played. And Queen A8, Queen to D6 is not convincing according to our superior commentator, because the queen can stay on this diagonal to keep this bishop alive. The best move here is... God, there's no way it's A4. I'm sure Sese probably. I mean, Rook B8 is what I would be lobbying for, setting up the potential for like Queen A8. You want to keep as many possible threats alive as possible. You don't want to commit to anything unless you know it's forced win.
Wait, but what does Rook B8 do? Sorry, like what's the
your
difference?
Move?
Like Queen D6. What's changed?
Yeah, this is like computer babble. Oh, it's to play Rook B1 in the end.
Oh, that is
Taimanov Karpov.
I was thinking actually that the queen could slide back to the H file at some point, but this is even nicer. Just getting the rook over there, and there's nothing black can do because king g8, bishop c4
Oh
check is
my god. So
over.
rook b8 to set up the maneuver to h1 so that when the h file opens, you can deliver the mate.
So, okay, that is really nice. And hg6, does that mean that black, well, you kind of have to
Does
take
play
that,
queen
right?
a8 though. He does play it. It's still winning, I think, but there's no forced win after queen d6. That's the thing.
So, wait, queen d6, hg6, what's the,
First of all, queen f7 here, I think it loses probably for many reasons. I think even the pawn
bishop
endgame is going to be lost.
is, yeah, like bishop c4 might be winning there as well.
I'm trying to calculate it in my head. There.
Also,
But I'm not totally sure, actually. It's like the margins are starting to narrow.
so queen d6,
Yep.
hg6,
Okay, hg6.
and there's still going to be some kind of checkmating idea that getting a piece of the H file.
Yeah, but the
So,
bishop is hanging there, so you don't have the time to swing the rook back to e1.
I see what you're saying.
So for people to understand what we're even talking about, I see that Arjun is potentially in some trouble there. If queen d6 is played and white trades on g6, people might be asking, well, what if I try to get my rook to h1? The difference is after black recaptures, the bishop then hangs, and here black wins the game. Rook h1, king g8 is a dead end for white. Okay, but Gukesh hasn't made a move yet, so he's clearly taking queen f7 very seriously. And maybe he should be.
Yeah, the A2 pawn's hanging with check as well. What an annoying move queen f7
But
is.
bishop c2 would end the game, transferring the bishop to a defended square, simultaneously ensuring that a2 cannot be captured with check.
Bishop c2.
It's a little bit better than bishop c8, but only by a tad,
That's an amazing idea.
and one
That's
that we will not
like
see.
that's exceptional.
Well, Gukesh took exception to it, and so that therefore he put the queen on d6. He's down below 9 minutes now.
So is Fabi on the smaller board there, and you were correct, Danya, that Fabi can march his king forward. The king on g6 would be very safe, and it's the white king that's in serious danger.
Well, both kings are in some danger, particularly if black plays king f7. God, Hikaru's another 23 minutes. I think I can take a Dubov nap. That's a 20-minute. That's like a nap before the next round of the World Rapid.
Can it? I was wondering if Hikaru could play rook d8 to protect his bishop,
Yeah, queen
and then
a3.
just try to play bishop c4, queen d5, and checkmate black on g8.
Um, well, I can play c6 at some point to cut off your queen.
That's very annoying.
How does Gukesh? It's just like it's like an octopus. You keep cutting the tentacles off, and others regrow to take their place. It's like somehow he keeps rearranging his pieces to prevent all of the entry points, just seal off all the entry points.
It's like the Caravaggio Medusa. It's a sight to behold. People line up to watch these excellent moves played by Gukesh when he is in trouble. Like, if only he could get off to a better start in these games, but he continues to impress with his defensive prowess. But Donna, it still feels like White should win this game. It's about just crashing through, but the queen on d6, the rook on f6, they're going to keep in line with that bishop on f8.
Very well said. And it will take a prayer. It will take. It will take something insane for Gukesh to win. But we've been saying that for the last 3 days, and something insane has most certainly happened yesterday and the day before yesterday. And Gukesh defeated Hikaru in their white game, so there's a lot on the line here. Hikaru knows that the narrative is being written, right? The stories are being written as this game is played. He doesn't want them to be published. He doesn't want them to turn into reality.
So you're saying the recap video is being recorded right now?
Oh, that is just below the belt, man. No, it's very well done. Very well done.
Thank you, my friend. But rook d8 is not a friendly move at all. It tries to set up queen d5, bishop c4, and leaves open h takes g6, mates along the h file. Everywhere you look, white is creating a new threat, and black is barely hanging on.
The world champion, he's been doing a lot of hanging on the last 3 days. And he wants to keep that 100% success rate, but it's going to take something cataclysmic.
I see a good comment in chat there by J3 saying if you can force h6 after h takes g6, then white can put a bishop on f7 to cut the rook on f6 off from that bishop on f8. Very good point, and that would lead to a win. So many different ways to play for a win, and I see you brought up the Vaishali game. Let me open that on my end.
And I'm going to open up the Caruana game. In case something crazy happens, I will pull that up immediately. But right now, like, Fabi and Arjun taken together will probably keep thinking while this game unfolds.
Wait, what? How come I can't get that game? Let me try again. Let me refresh.
I have special privileges as the
now it works.
resident nobody.
It was showing the same position that they had played previously. So now I see what's going on. And Vaishali, she's up over 3 minutes, playing very quickly. And Danya, in a must-win game, exactly the type of position you want if you're Vaishali.
And she has been all over the place this tournament, but she's been all over the place on the board in a good sense. Queen to b3 here would come to mind. You can massage this weak pawn on b7. And the way Magnus game, we saw, the weak square on b6. It can impact you in the long run. You also have some positional things to decide. Like, do you want to trade the knights? Do you want to play like Naroditsky? The answer is no. But for some reason, she does. She'll learn eventually.
Well, playing like Danya means that you're getting tactical, that you're going on the offensive. And I would say that white's position is very good for Vaishali. Like, even a classical game, I would love to have this from the white side. And it's not just because the eval bar is slightly better for white. It just feels like there are many different options here. The queen can jump up to b6. Is there something wrong with that right now?
I think Vaishali has the same question, and Jun would hope that the answer is yes, but I think the answer is no. In Hikaru's game, rook to d8 was met with queen e7, but this does allow now the potential for an exchange on g6. If we look over at the big board, folks, where is the win there? Oh, can you step away with a king and set up queen h1?
King f1?
King f1 to prevent the check. You're exactly right. Can you take and go king f1?
There's g5.
No way. Bishop g6?
What?
Bishop g6 after
Oh.
g5.
You are a bad man.
No, but queen e2. But the king is on f1. Does this win the game? Does king f1 to set up this move that you never get to play in your chess career? Queen a8 back to h1 check?
You are a bad man.
I don't know. I'm not looking. I'm not verifying with the third commentator, but the second one seems to agree with me, Robert. Don't you? Oh, c6.
King f.
Crud.
Then queen. Oh, queen c8. Now we're in that position. Queen c8. Go queen h3.
There was even bishop takes g6, but queen c8 is lovely geometry. And
I'm just taking your
G5
idea.
there. G5.
No, queen c8 now. g5 f g5.
Oh, queen c8 here immediately.
Yeah, don't pin yourself.
But I was thinking you could throw in king f1, but you're absolutely right. Queen c8, why procrastinate? Queen c8 is great awareness.
Does black have... Oh, but queen c5 to block with queen h5 runs into bishop takes g6, I guess?
Oh, queen c6 check. Oh, this must be winning.
It feels like it has to be, but
what about queen c8, rook f7?
Wait. Queen h3 check.
King g8.
Keep it on the board. Rook takes f8 check.
Whoa.
Does it work? Does it work, though?
What a move. No. Or maybe rook takes f8. Rook takes f8.
Oh,
That's an amazing, because otherwise king f8 is mate, queen f8 is unstoppable mate. Wait, but what's the winning move here? If Hikaru finds queen c8, of course, which is a big if, but more like a big when. What is the crusher? It's like plus 8 million.
Just like rook somewhere and then bishop c4 next, unstoppable.
Uh-huh.
Rook d4.
Rook d4, yeah. Yeah, too many threats. Bishop c4 and bishop g6 is just a double attack, as simple as that. My God. How much like geometry and weird patterns have we had this game?
Well, yeah, we've had all sorts of ideas to distract pieces, to leave pawns after they've been captured, to sacrifice and go after the enemy king. It's
Ooh.
been a fun day. What are you
And
seeing?
king f1 is not as convincing because of queen c5, and in certain situations that king will get vulnerable. So Hikaru, this is a very important example of not only do you have to find the correct idea, you then have to ask yourself, what is the most accurate execution of this idea? Can I find like another way to exploit the idea, carry it out without, enabling the drawbacks of my original intention?
I hear you. Sorry, I'm just trying to keep up with all of the games. Fabi is better as well.
Oh my God.
Humpy, she's so much better against Sarah Kadem right now. So these games are all heating up at the same time.
Oh my gosh, I'm so tired, but this is just so much happening right now.
Well, I guess
I feel like these
as
rounds,
we
it's only been like 2.5 hours. No, 3.5 hours. But still, it's not a lot.
No, it's not. But Danya, it's not a lot of time for Ju and June. But what I do appreciate about her game is her latest move, B7 to B5, extremely instructive from the women's world champion. She's saying, Vaishali, I know you're going to come for my king. You're going to attack me. Yes, you best not miss. But more importantly, I am going to distract your forces by breaking open the queen side so you can't have singular focus on the king side.
Yeah, the idea isn't to play b4. I think it's to open the b file. But you best not miss. You best not mess with White's attack. Obviously, Vaishali is not hiding her intentions, and nor should she. Queen f8 by Ju and June thrown in. Queen h4 would be my instinctive response. Of course, queen g5 is also possible.
But queen d8 is the
take
response
it.
either way from black.
I take it and I take b5.
The rook slides back to b8.
It's on the board. Queen d8, very well spotted. Queen f6
Yeah.
is an interesting collinear move, but I don't think it's enough in the endgame. Vaishali finds a way to keep the queens on the board.
It's what we've been talking about, though, Danya. In Armageddon games, when black is the one who gets the points with a draw, that players don't want to trade queens. Even if it leaves white with an advantage, it's a scary thought because, as the mantra goes, right, all rook end games are drawn.
All rook end games are drawn. But all games have been drawn, or might be drawn in the classical portion. Although Humpy looks like she's going to win. That's another game that's heating up, but it's not where the center of the action is at. What is Ju and June going to do? Because the threat of f5 has been renewed. Can she play?
It looks tough.
Ooh, she ignores the threat. Maybe she wants f5, rook takes b2, but then
No, but
fg.
Oh, I would think it's fe. But I didn't know if it mattered so
F
much.
anywhere.
The black, yeah, the black king is just too exposed.
It's on the board. And if you move the bishop, the floodgates are going to open, and you just don't have the beef on the king side to throw anything at white's attack. It's like 3 pieces against none.
Great opening choice from Vaishali. It
Hikaru.
just from the get.
Uh-huh.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. He's played queen c8.
No, you go ahead.
Go on.
He's going for the mate. It looks like Gukesh played queen c5 to meet queen h3 with queen h5. But I was just going to say very quickly, Danya, on the left-hand board underneath our cameras, that for Vaishali, it was an excellent opening choice. She was able to get an asymmetrical pawn structure from the start, gain activity on the queen side, and she translated that activity into play on the king side in a vicious attack.
She was able to do that out of a Berlin. And rook takes b2 is played. Now Vaishali has to decide which pawn does she take. It's like you go trick-or-treating. You're offered 2 types of candy. Do both of these moves win? We're talking about taking the bishop or taking the pawn and trying to destroy black's pawn cover. Taking the pawn is riskier. I think take the bishop. I agree, Ra. I think it's the simpler option, and then take the pawn.
But really good choice from Ju and June here. She's in trouble. Fe6 and my queen b6 check takes that pawn back. And how many pawns will black get for the lost bishop? Is it 3?
Well, unfortunately, it should have been met. It will not be met by
Whoa.
that. And black's king will meet the hands of death after rook f1.
You have to block it,
Oy.
otherwise the pawn promotes, and then e6, queen d4 check. Everything is going to hurt.
No, this is get your tools, get your torture devices ready. This is just like that pawn cover is going to be blown to smithereens after rook f6 and queen h5, and rook takes g6 wins the queen and wins the game.
Yes, that's game over. Vaishali, I mean, what a knockout this game was.
That attack, I mean, I think she had like 5 pieces more than necessary. I mean, just the pawns could have decided. What an incredible consecutive game. She really built that up patiently, spent time at the right moments, and defeats the women's world champion in the Armageddon. That's one that will go into her best games collection for sure. And we are watching the Fabiano game, which is heating up. Look at Fabi's clock. He's got 3.5 minutes. That might not be enough time to figure anything out.
But Arjun's in big trouble. I mean, Fabi doesn't have much time. That's true. But rook takes h4 is always going to be a threat against the white king. The queen can always step back to h5 for black, keeping d5 defended, threatening rook takes h4, bishop f3, bishop g4, all sorts of ideas. And the black king is very safe.
By the way, Sara Kadem is just collapsing. It seems every middle game she just cannot find her footing. Of course, not ashamed to lose to the elder stateswoman of Indian chess. Humpy Canaro is just a few moves away. I'm keeping an eye on that game. Our eyes are all over these two games as Hikaru Nakamura looks to put the finishing touches with bishop takes g6, and Fabiano decides whether he wants to repeat moves. This is a repetition, by the way, Robert. He has just come from g6. So look, but no, he came from f7 to g6 to h7. Never mind.
He's playing for a win. Why should he make a draw, Fabiano? He's has the healthier king and all sorts of attacking chances. But Danya, Hikaru hasn't moved. He's down under 14 minutes. And, well, Magnus was winning against Gukesh, started getting in time trouble, and went wrong. So Hikaru's trying to find the precise continuation that stops black's threats. Bishop takes g6 is a move we've been talking about. But after queen c6 check, maybe the white king doesn't have anywhere nice to run.
Or maybe Hikaru thinks that he doesn't have anywhere nice to run. Where should he run in the event of queen c6 check? To h2? And why not?
And then maybe queen c5 back.
Queen h3.
Oh, I missed that.
So what exactly is the problem here? The eval bar drops. What on earth? Queen c6 check, king h2. The problem is, king g8. The king sidesteps the check. And suddenly, you're absolutely right. The king on h2 is going to feel mighty lonely, especially at the hands of black's queen, which will land on one of these squares. This guy never dies. Like, Gukesh just keeps finding ways to stay in the game, and this was the best move. Bishop e4, forcing c6, and then you take on g6, stopping the check. What an idea to cap off. Honestly, a brilliancy from Hikaru.
That is such a strong move, not just because it's recommended by the engine, but bishop d5, cutting that queen off from the h file. Queen h5 is the only way to stop queen h3 check. And so bishop d5 comes in another attacker. The g6 pawn, not as relevant as checkmate.
I retire, more like retireless, because this guy, bishop e4, what an application of logic in chess, right? Like you look at bishop g6, you understand what's wrong with it, and then you ask yourself, I'm not going to abandon the idea. I'm going to make a move to set up a auxiliary threat. What is that auxiliary threat? That is the threat of going bishop d5, and then queen h3 is unstoppable. Therefore, Gukesh has to play c6, and only then does the bishop travel to g6. By the way, this is winning, Robert, because after rook f5, you have to also see that the queen steps back to e6. Every square that black defends, he gives up a different square. And look at this mate. I mean, the king might get mated on h6. Just
brutal.
Divine, honestly. Divine technique by Hikaru Gukesh, trying his last pawns, with his last minutes to complicate the game. What a valiant effort by Gukesh as well. We just got to applaud him, because this game still isn't over. It is not over.
The fact that this game is still going just feels ridiculous, but it's Gukesh's fighting spirit. So what's the move here? F takes g5, Danya. There's queen f2 check, but maybe the checks run out, and so you can successfully grab that pawn, but it looks scary at first glance.
Absolutely. 12 minutes for Nakamura. He just needs one or two more accurate moves, but I've been saying that for 20 moves. I'm not sure what the move is. I would imagine it's f takes g5 and then king h3.
Rook d5 is somewhat tempting as well, but then queen takes c3 and the game continues. Yeah, he's just taking away the blocking squares. Queen takes g5, drops the bishop on f8 with checkmate. The queen's ready to slide back to h3 with mate anyway, and a check on f2. The white king is able to run to h3, and there's only a few more checks.
Yeah, queen f2, king h3, queen f1. You could even step up to h4, and there are no checks. You could block with the bishop. There's a choice there that white would have, as Arjun is just like crumbling at the seams, but does Fabi have the time to punish him?
That's been the story for Fabiano in this event. He lost a worse position against Hikaru. Since then, he's won 3 games of classical chess, and that's why he's been the lead. But there also were some games that got away from him, including his position against Magnus, where he did have a win in that endgame, but not enough time to calculate. So, Danya, black is better here. We see the eval bar. Is queen takes c3 a free pawn that Fabi can take?
Well, that's what Arjun wants him to spend his time thinking. I have no idea. Bishop f8 is a mate threat that he has. Queen f5 by Fabi. He keeps the queen in the area of white's king.
Oh, you know what he's going for?
What?
Bishop b5 to d7.
Oh my god. He's looking
How
at
do
the
you stop
h3
that?
square as a mating square. Oh, I have no idea. Bishop e3 and then g4. At some point, white might have to go.
No.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it looks so bad, but maybe it's necessary, as you're indicating.
Man, I think when I play this title Tuesday after we finish commentating, if I don't blunder a queen in every game, that will be a miracle.
You know, what you need to do is get a thematic title Tuesday, opposite colored bishops.
Yeah, force every game into play it like Olegas on ICC. Well, you might remember him on ICC.
Who is that, sorry?
He's the guy who would play the Berlin every game and draw every single game. But anyways, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
Let's focus on the games.
You distracted me and then undistracted me. Appreciate that. But for Fabiano, he is locked in on those light squares. Bishop b5, bishop d7, queen h3 would be checkmate. And Donna, you raise a good point on our left-hand board that maybe Arjun needs to sacrifice material to stave off the first wave of attack. And for Hikaru on the right-hand side, the big board, I think that Gukesh is out of moves. It's just a checkmate on the H-file or on the 8th rank.
Out of moves and almost out of time. And, at some point you run out of pieces to create resources with. And even if you are as valiant of a defender, as resilient of a player, and even if you've mounted as miraculous of a comeback as you have in this tournament, there comes a point where Hikaru just squashes your resistance.
And they usually say third time's the charm, but for Gukesh, it looks like the third time is the one time he'll lose, because he has seemed invincible in the last few days, but this game has been one-sided ever since Gukesh decided to take away from the center and expose his light squares.
Made in 23, according to Ceci, that really informs our conception. It really deepens our understanding of why black is lost. Without that knowledge, I don't think I could have really understood this position. Just kidding. Thank you for that information. That's kind of funny.
And I'm just trying to keep track of everything. Humpy Kuneru,
good luck.
just absolutely winning now. Humpy it's just over. I mean, Sarah Kadem is down a pawn. The bishops are very strong. So I just wanted to note that Humpy is going to be in first place in the women's section.
Rook to e1 there. Arjun or guys he threatened, checkmate in one move with bishop f8. But that's a one-move threat. Fabi's maneuver with his bishop would create a one-move threat that is far harder to stop. Rook f7, Hikaru. What is the final touch? Queen g4, g6. Not sure. I don't know. Let him show us. Can he play g6?
G6 looks very strong.
A queen f1 check is Gukesh's intention, I think.
But even there, bishop g2, forcing the queens off, has to be winning for white.
Yeah. Okay, 12 minutes to figure it out.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what else to say about this game, because it unlike the previous days where suddenly we're believing in Gukesh's chances and his position, Hikaru has given him no chance to mount a comeback.
Yeah, it's checkmate. That's the problem. When you're dealing with checkmate, it's a lot more of a deterministic win. It's like not undefined. Like, in an end game you can create counterplay here, unless Hikaru blunders in one move, which he never does, as g6 lands on the board. We're going to get a handshake here. Also, look at his time management. It's been phenomenal. Really hats off to his time management. Thank you, Daryl, for the subs. Let me thank someone on your behalf once, Robert. I think I owe you several of those.
I appreciate that. Thanks, Daryl, for tuning in. I know you're very busy right now, but always appreciate your support. So let's see what's going on here. The last few moves between Hikaru and Gukesh.
That's
It's
it.
a good time to be a Hikaru fan, as you're saying. It's mate in how many now?
I mean, I wouldn't trust the eval bar. I mean, Queen F1, King H4. It's made in one because Gukesh is going to extend his hand, I think. He's going to try Queen F1, Queen C1 maybe first. Maybe.
Oh, that does keep the game going. Huh.
No, but then Rook D5. King H4, Queen C1, Rook D5. How about that? Bishop E7. I mean, Jesus, this guy just won't go down ever.
You know, it reminds me of Austin Powers, but you probably haven't seen those movies either.
Long time ago.
Why won't you die?
I've only seen
So
San Antonio Powers. Houston Powers.
what?
By the way, he like the city in Texas.
But why Powers?
No, like I just making a pun.
Oh, okay, sorry.
A low effort, crappy pun that I should have never made, and Hikaru will get a bishop to f7 and mate his opponent.
Ouch. Ouch. The most clinical way of finishing this game where black's pieces can't really move anymore. So for Gukesh, it's not going to be a happy day.
Well, every Russian schoolboy knows Hikaru's like is like closer to 40 than he is to 14. But the spark, the flame of attack, the technical prowess, none of that has been diminished in this light. It feels like he's gotten better at that as the years go on. The age-defying Hikaru Nakamura. What a game against the world champion. Bishop to d5, a centralizing move, and bishop f7 unstoppable. You just got to take your hat off. Because f takes g6, he never looked back.
And we've been kind of describing games where Magnus against Gukesh, Gukesh played very resilient defense, was super resourceful. This game, it honestly was decided, Danya, on, was that move 20, f takes g6?
Exactly 30 moves before the game ended. The move ended on move 50.
And I mean, it's just one of these moments where you play this position 100 times. F takes g6 is the move you play in one. Unfortunately, it's today, and unfortunately for Gukesh, that's going to really hurt his chances to win Norway Chess, especially if Fabiano on the other board there can win in the classical.
And when he analyzes these games, as I pull up, I mean, Humpy's game I think is just over, right? In any case, I'm going to pull up the Arjun game on the big board, folks, and I just have a comment, but Fabi's under a minute. Just last thing, Gukesh, when he analyzes this tournament with his seconds and his team, I mean, defense, he needs no work on. That is a strong suit, but some of these inexplicable decisions, that will need to be addressed. Fabi needs to address the fact that he's got 38 seconds to make a move.
Yeah, Fabi's got to speed up, and has not always been his calling card, at least in historically speaking. But right now, he has the attack going. And Danya, I mean, what's so annoying for Fabi is that this bishop on c5, it keeps going to f8 at the right moment, threatening checkmate and stopping black from executing his
Queen
plans.
f3 has been played, and I'm going to resize the board once again. Here we go. Queen f3 has been played. We're good.
So why does that have a question mark attached to it?
Not sure. The eval bar focuses on the small board. The big board is now our analysis board.
Okay, but Danya, I just did that thing where I looked to our third commentator. It's saying for white, at least on a relatively low depth,
Yeah.
Queen c8 check, King
Okay.
h7, Queen h3. Like, that is just such an ugly sequence to play.
Queen c8 check, King h7, Queen h3, and trying to bring the queen back to g2. So it's a purely defensive idea, is what you're saying.
But even there, Queen g2 is a little bit slow because Queen takes c3 is hanging. So, like, it takes a lot of time, but you are bringing your defenses closer to your king.
Oh, and the point is Queen c3. There was Queen f5 check, I think.
Yes. But, you know what I mean? It doesn't really feel like something you want to do.
I mean, I don't want this position in the first place. But Arjun... Yeah, I mean, we saw against Gukesh, he was playing almost instantly, but that's because his position... this position was hopeless, right? Here... It's not like he thinks, oh, I'm dead lost. My only chance is to flag Fabi. So he has to find that balance.
And we should point out, by the way, the Queen d8 check takes the pawn on d5. That would backfire because the queens are in diagonal with one another. Think about what happens when the piece in between them gets out the way.
Yeah, lose the queen.
And there is Rook takes h4 check, and the queen drops.
It's a great explanation. I'm sorry. How rude can you get as a co-commentator?
Yeah, you're in a mood today. It's because I didn't get your Texas City joke.
Yeah, I mean, should I mention Gus Houston? I think it's Gus Huston, actually. Yeah, you're gonna send me right to the Gus to. I don't even know where this sentence is going.
I have no clue. But I'm going to shout out everybody who's tuning in, who's been following each and every day. Donnie and I are covering this entire event, so whether you're on YouTube or Twitch, we appreciate you and all your support. Please hit the follow button. I think now's the time to say that. And just so you don't miss any of the remaining action in rounds 9 and the final round 10 on Friday. But right now, Danya, all of our attention is on this game. Arjun down to 4 minutes, 40 seconds. Tick, tick, tick goes the clock. And it's not an easy position for White to play, even if the evaluation bar says that White's not doing so poorly. It just is a one-sided position in Fabi's favor.
Look at that light square dominance. And all of your attention is on this game. My attention is very partially divided because I'm keeping a just side eye on the Humpy game. Humpy down to 90 seconds, and for some reason having a hard time converting that advantage, some of which he's already lost. So it might be a good game to pull up on the small board.
Let's do it.
All right. Executive decision has been made.
I think there's a game ender for Humpy, and coaching wisdom usually tells you when you're ahead material, try to trade. And if that board comes up there, I think she can try to trade queens, and White has no choice but to accept that.
Let's keep our eye on this game. I think if she makes a mistake, I'll pull it up immediately. But for now, there's no intrigue there. It's a winning end game with up a pawn, I think.
Okay. And X marks the spot. Danya, it's not appreciated by the engine, but 38 seconds for Fabi. He gains 10 seconds with every move played, but that move apparently incorrect.
No, it's not appreciated by the engine. I don't appreciate the engine.
Looks like a pretty normal move to me.
Yeah, he's just, preventing White from playing h5. He's driving in tightening the screws over White's king. And he's making a move that he knows sort of maintains the status quo. So he knows that with 38 seconds, he'll be able to handle the consequences.
Sure, because queen c8 check, king h7, you get one check, the black king escapes and is very safe. And in some positions, down at g7 and g5 becomes an idea because the black king can run on those light squares.
Just like Nigel Short did against Bobby Fischer. Thank you, Hib R. Thank GM Hess thanks you. GM Naroditsky can't talk.
Yeah, appreciate those gifted subs. Thank you to everybody who's been supporting us. We're trying to do our best to provide you the coverage of Norway Chess, and it's getting even more exciting by the day because for Arjun-Caruana, maybe a little bit too exciting.
5 more subs. Thank you so much. Look at this game, though. I will thank you properly afterward. 30 seconds for Fabi. The pawn is hanging with a check. That's such an Arjun move. He's not playing queen c8 to not force the action, to bleed a little bit more time from Fabi's clock.
So king h7, is there bishop f8 then? And there's rook g4 for black, so you can't stop checkmate without trading queens.
Bishop c4 played.
Okay, f2 would fall if the dark square bishop moves for white, so be very careful. I'm saying that to myself.
And I'm saying something to Fabi. d4 and bishop e6 is one of those hidden threats that's so easy to miss. b5,
wow.
Arjun opening the a file. Can black play d4? Bishop e6 and rook takes h4 becomes a mate threat.
Wow, and also, what's wrong with a takes b5?
Rook a1 is what Arjun is playing for a win here, and he might end up playing for a loss. 10 seconds for Fabi to make the decision. He takes with the bishop. Okay. Giving d5 up with a check.
He'd never enough time, but Danya, after queen takes d5, there's a threat of rook takes h4 check. The queen is hanging, and there's bishop c6 ideas.
Totally get it. With his clock ticking down, Fabi wants to mitigate his risk. Rook d1.
I was saying queen d1 here, but then it's just queen f5.
Or rook e2.
Yeah, the attack rages on,
Arjun far from out of the woods here. Great call. Queen d1 has been played.
Okay.
He's very much in the woods, actually.
But nice and great musical. Queen d1 here. That move received a question mark, and rook e2 played quickly by Fabi. Is rook takes f2 a threat, or
bishop c6? It's a second order threat. Bishop c6 would make it a threat.
And how do you stop this for Arjun? Because actually, queen b1, bishop d3 blocks the check, and then you reroute the bishop to e4 anyway.
I think it's time for desperation. We sense the hint of b5 by Arjun forced the action at a time when he was more close to defending than he thought he was. Bishop e3 runs into queen takes e3. It might be time for something desperate like g4. But h takes g4 doesn't do anything.
It allows black to threaten mate in 1.
It loses the game faster is what it does.
Because rook g3, there's rook takes f2, and the queen on d1 is hanging. This is really bad. Danya, the only thing I see is queen b1, bishop d3, and maybe queen b8 to f4, but that endgame might even be losing for white, so we might have similarities to some of the other opposite colored bishop games we've seen.
And Arjun's biggest asset, the one that he clearly pinned his hopes on, because he's not pinning his hopes on this pin, it's not even really a pin at all, is Fabi's clock, and his own clock is dwindling. Great call, and again, queen b1 check on the board. I think he is going to b8. Arjun has great full board awareness, but it might not help him. Might be too late. Never mind.
He goes to c1
Same
to try
idea.
to go queen f4. So what's the objective evaluation? Because it could be a hold for Arjun with the queen trade.
The objective evaluation is like, +2 is meaningless. I think we need to wait to see if the endgame happens, which it will, I think. I think it's holdable. It's holdable for Arjun.
So bishop
Queen-
e4 play, queen f4 coming.
Is Fabi thinking about rejecting the queen trade? Well, there's our
Can't,
answer.
right?
He does, but bishop e3 and g4, and Arjun could get an attack against black's king if you're not careful. Sorry to be so animated about this, but that's a big deal.
Yeah, that
G4 is a
really is.
really big deal.
It's a hard move to play, especially now the bishop's on g6 because the g file is closed
Not if
down.
you're Arjun.
H5 is defended. Arjun has played much more ambitious moves than this because g4 is actually, I think, objectively good.
And there's rook d1. He plays g4. Arjun is a g4 kind of guy. I wouldn't
And what
rob
does-
anyone of the opportunity to look at this and appreciate it.
Well, what is good opening reference there? HG4?
Queen g4, queen e5 check. Fabi's still safe. Fabi's still okay. But h5 here, no.
Bishop takes. And...
Rook. I think Arjun's playing for a win.
But sometimes you play for a win, you're playing for a loss. I know
Precisely.
Fabi's 33 seconds, but he's also up a pawn, and it's not like white's king is all that safe.
Wait, I didn't even see the rook is hanging after queen g4. That's so easy to forget about.
So queen e5 check is just completely needed, and pawn f4 there is met by queen h5. What a... Oh, pawn f4 is pinned. You
Only
can't go
moves.
f4.
Only
You
moves,
know you
but
can't
they're
go-
incredibly strong.
You can't go f4, Donnie. The f2 pawn's pinned.
Oh, it is. Yeah, you have to step back with the king. Actually, where do you go? You can't go anywhere. You have to block with the rook.
My bad, everybody. Making illegal moves in my excitement. By the way, it looks like Humpy has made a mistake in the end game. Both players down to 30 seconds in that game.
Do I pull that up on the small board?
Yeah, put it on the small board.
Oh my god, of course I was wrong. Humpy was unbelievably, I can't believe that this has been even reached. H5 by Arjun. What in the
Wow.
world? The small board is
Bishop-
Humpy, guys. I don't have time to resize it. I'm sorry.
Oh,
Bishop
what is he's gonna take on g4 with queen e5 check
and queen
now?
h5. Rook g3,
Oh,
queen h5,
rook
rook
G3!
h3! Is Fabi gonna lose?
Oh my
Fabi
goodness.
blundered! He's gonna lose. Rook h3, this is insane. A check is met with a pin. This is so easy to forget about.
Oh my gosh. Arjun's turned this around like Gukesh did yesterday and the day before.
No, that's even, the suddenness with which this happened. It wasn't over the course of 10 moves. It was over the course of 1.
Is there anything that black can do here? Like queen takes g3 check. Can you somehow survive rook against queen with opposite colored bishops?
Oh, well, let's check. Let's put the eval bar back on. It's 1.8, but Fabi is reeling from this. I don't think he has the brain power to figure out what just happened to him. He might end up giving up his queen and giving up the game. And he does.
Wow. What? So he's giving up his queen in this way?
No, it's that it's over. The game is over. Queen g4. Queen g4.
Queen g4, bishop d3?
Yeah,
barely
but
staying alive?
It doesn't bishop d4. You don't even need to win one of black's pieces, but you can if you want to.
I don't think that anyone would complain. I guess I'm trying to figure out if there's some sort of fortress, but it doesn't look likely.
Without the bishops, maybe we could have a conversation. With the bishops on the board, I don't see it happening. Bishop d3 is forced.
So bishop h6 now threatens mate.
Bishop d4, rook e4. I can see what you're saying. It's you can't relax entirely. I think Arjun is looking for a forced win. I don't see one. I don't see a forced win. How about queen e6, queen d4? The bishop will anchor itself on b5 and keep the rook protected. Fabi is still looking for something like that.
Fabi has legitimate chances to hold this because the bishop on b5, as you're pointing out, everything is defended, And the only way that white can go and win is to put pressure on g7, which is way easier said than done.
I guess I'm just under the influence of what just happened in this game, but Fabi has managed to adjust, and he's taking Arjun's time here to just take some deep breaths. Oh my
And
gosh.
look at the small board. Humpy may have made one mistake, but unfortunately for Sarah Kadem, she was the one who made the final one, and Humpy is winning and will take the lead in
Yeah, resigns. Let's pull up the
resignation.
Fabi game here on the analysis board so we can show lines if necessary. That game is over. Bishop to h6, threatening checkmate. And rook f2, king to g3 is the point.
So rook e7, that means
Forced.
that's the only move.
g6 is too weakening.
And what happens after rook e7? Because if the bishops get traded, Danya, I think
Oh,
then that's a
it's
draw.
tactics time for Arjun. Queen c8 check, and he'll pick off the bishop.
Oh, that's really nice.
Bishop e2 here is that gonna help? No, wait, bishop e2? Can he try
Queen
that?
g6, Queen g6,
Oh,
and then Queen
no,
a
you
check.
didn't.
Arjun did.
Well, so did Robert Hess. Check. Pow. And with the f pawn, it's dead loss. There isn't even a iota of a hope for a fortress.
Yeah, you need the pawn to be on the g file for white and the black pawn back on f7. As soon as that pawn goes forward, Dvoretsky's endgame manual will tell you that black is not happy to have the pawn more advanced.
Now, Dvoretsky is just as shocked as we are. Arjun is thinking, do I pick up the pawn on a6 or do I push my f pawn first? All roads lead to Stavanger right now. Oh. Humpy won,
What
yes,
a-
of course.
Humpy did win, and she's in first place over there in Norway Chess Women 2025. And Fabi was in first place, and he could have extended his lead after Hikaru beat Gukesh. But now things are all up in the air.
Well, the instructions for this to win this are don't blunder your f pawn, repeat step 1 until you win the game.
And actually, even if you do blunder your f pawn, sometimes it's still winning for white because the pawn's on f6 rather than f7.
Arjun's like, we don't talk about that here.
So, yeah, he's just going to go queen e6, queen e7 check and win the pawn.
What a swindle. Arjun on the receiving end of, I wouldn't call it a swindle, an amazing defensive effort yesterday. Today, this was straight out of, I don't even know what it was straight out of. Gukesh's playbook.
What a turnaround. And Fabi is going to be reeling and kicking himself because
Are you
he's been playing
sure?
great classical chess.
Let me take the Robert Hess position here. King
Yes.
h6, king g5. If black can avoid getting forked, if black can win the pawn, he gets holding chances. But he can't.
So can you give a bunch of checks now?
Rosentrap over the board?
That would be wild.
No,
With
no,
B1,
no.
okay.
No way. Queen a7, queen f7.
The king of fate?
No, queen f7. Now queen f7 for sure. Goodbye.
Yeah, that's that.
And
That's
rook
game
b3.
over.
Rook b3 isn't even possible. That square's defended too.
And there's no stalemate because the black king has many options, g5, and then other squares if the queen were to leave. So that means Fabi is now officially toast.
Smooth like a train on a well-oiled track. This game was anything but smooth. Fabi's knight will be anything but smooth, but the queen captures the rook. Fabi is left with just a lone pawn to contemplate the defeat of its fellow army, and the king surrenders in more ways than one. Arjun Aragaisi is the king of swindles today. How did this happen?
I wish I had an answer to that question, but Danya, I think it all started to go wrong for Fabi because he was better and he didn't want to acquiesce to a slightly superior endgame where a draw was the likely result. So if we go back to this move b5 by Arjun, he took a risk because he felt stuck. He felt like he was just defending. And
I
had
was
no
right.
plans of his
D4
own.
was the winning move, and bishop e6. But you have to
Yeah.
spot that pattern, and that's a pattern you got to see with the rook takes h4. It's easy for me to say. Well, I did see it. I'm going to give myself a little credit. Bishop e6 is winning on the spot. And rook takes h4.
Yeah.
In order to stop that, you have to give everything up.
Yeah, rook takes h4, queen stays. You're showing his mate. But even if you move the queen and move the rook away from g1, like it doesn't look like checkmate anymore. So I understand the reluctance to go.
Oh, my God.
What's that?
Look at this. Look at this mate. And it goes on. If you go rook g1, rook to e1, you have to put all of your pieces on. Yeah, how did he miss that? What a scrub. But I'm more surprised that he didn't trade queens, I'll be honest. I'm much more surprised that he didn't trade queens there at the end.
First of all, that was a sick continuation. Love that we got to play that out. But I agree. I think that he was so in the mindset of trying to win the game that he didn't hit that break. And he didn't switch into the, okay, if my opponent makes a draw, then so be it. Because as this game continued and the queen went to f4 here, he just didn't realize that his king could get in danger with his g4 idea. So that's, I think that's really a mindset issue, even more so than a gameplay issue.
The worst would be behind white here, but black could still continue to fight. Instead, queen c3, Arjun always senses the moment, and g4 was objectively the best move. But instead of queen takes g4, which allowed this maneuver, h5 is really what threw Fabi in for a surprise. And with just his second sticking down, Fabi missing essentially an only move, queen c7 check. Rook g, no, it's already like impossible. Queen c2, you have to allow this check and understand that actually black is winning here, even though it looks like he's getting mated. No, this is already insurmountable. And after rook g3, he had to take on g3. That was the better version of it. Still would have been lost. And instead, this is gorgeous. This will haunt Fabi in his nightmares tonight.
Arjun with sick tactics. He didn't play his best game, but he played really well in crunch time. And he was able to not just swindle. I mean, there were some great ideas by Arjun there. G4 and H5, amazing tactical vision, just a great awareness of the clock and the sort of the turn, the trajectory of the game. And for Arjun, I mean, to net that point, not just point, sorry, 3 points, he has a chance to win Norway Chess all of a sudden.
Unbelievable. Absolutely swindles the wrong. I wish there was a word because, I mean, you don't just swindle someone like Fabi, right? You don't just swindle someone like Magnus if you're Gukesh. This is the product of unbelievable resilience mentally, often on the board, and using all of the resources at your disposal, and even those that aren't, to create a situation where your opponent fails to adapt to the new circumstances and to turn it around 180 like this. Robert, it feels like we're not just seeing games that are saved. We are seeing games every time that are turned around completely, which is amazing.
They're hitting them with the Uno reverse card. Like, you think you did the right thing and suddenly it's back to you and you don't have the card to play. And I mean, in all seriousness, just what a turnaround in this game where Arjun was defending. And for Fabi, he didn't sense the danger. And a reason for that danger was he did not have enough time to calculate all sorts of crazy tactics.
Which impacts our tournament standings. How? Fabi is still in first place. If you can believe that.
Because Gukesh lost?
Because Gukesh lost. Magnus is in second place. Okay, I think he needs to tone down the retirement talk, and so does Hikaru. So the 3 oldest players are first, second, and third?
Yes. And then the Indian players, they have a chance, especially Arjun now with that classical win. He's in striking distance. Gukesh, he was doing well thanks to 2 wins in a row. And even after the loss, he still has a chance. And Donnie, we get a rest day tomorrow.
Thank
That's
the Lord.
The good bit of news for everybody. But I'm looking at those pairings for round 9. Hikaru against Arjun. Gukesh, Wei Yi. That's a big opportunity for Gukesh. I feel like Wei Yi, he's been playing really well. He just took down Magnus in Armageddon today, right?
Yeah, and Fabi's reward for losing is to play Magnus with black, so not great.
That's what I was about to highlight, right? That Fabi is already going to be upset, and then he gets the black pieces against the world number 1.
And in the women's section, Humpy is in first. The women's world champion is tied for second with Anna Muzichuk, and they're playing each other in the next round.
And Vaishali, who's always entertaining, she gets white against Sarah Kadem. So, a couple wins.
Has to win that one. That's a game she's circling in red ink with white pieces against a struggling Sarah Kadem. Who's a great player, but you got to beat the people who are struggling. Like, this is the lesser evil.
And you mentioned this earlier in the event where in the women's candidates, Vaishali won like the last 5 games. So she needs to continue her resurgence here, especially after today's win in Armageddon.
It's hard to win 5 games in a row in a big tournament against good players. Yeah, I don't know anybody else who's done that, but Magnus Carlsen, he is circling that game in red ink because he has had a chip on his shoulder these last few rounds. That will be a delicious matchup, a rematch, of course, from the World Championship. I think we're going to see more combative chess. And today, a round that felt like some players were okay with a quick draw, it took a complete 180 when Gukesh played f takes g6. Like, that move was the dividing point between what could have been a boring round and what ended up being, of course, another vintage round of Norway chess action.
A strategically poor decision from Gukesh. That cost him 30 moves later and ended up with Hikaru gaining 3 full points and tying for third in the standings, very close behind the 2 players he's trailing. And then, of course, Arjun, he turned it around tactically against Fabiano, whereas in the women's tournament, there were a couple draws in Armageddon, but Humpy Koneru, she is in first place thanks to her wins in classical chess, and I think she's deserved this lead, and everybody deserves a rest day tomorrow.
Great transition, and I don't deserve a co-commentator like you, not a community like the one that we've had. Apologies if I was honestly just very, very tired today. It's been, I just feel like there's so much to take in, and there's so little time to reset yourself mentally before the next, before the gladiators reset their initial positions. So luckily, the players will retire to their hotel rooms for the next 36 hours. Hopefully they will not retire from chess. The commentators will retire their voice boxes for a bit, and we will be fully recharged because we have 2 crucial rounds that are going to determine probably the most interesting classical tournament in recent memory.
It's going to be Armageddon, and not just because we have that format here in Norway Chess. I just want to thank everybody. Lots of support today. Really appreciate it. We were in a time scramble just to cover all the action. We saw the gifted subs coming in. We saw people supporting with kind words, and we do appreciate any follow that you can give, because we will be back not tomorrow, but on Thursday and Friday for the final 2 rounds of Norway Chess. I see that late in the day sub there to your channel, Danya.
Thank you.
So thank you, Alamoth. And yes, appreciate everybody's support. It's been awesome, and there's still 2 rounds to go.
There is indeed. Get out of here, folks. Enjoy the rest day tomorrow. I think Neiman Giri might be happening. So there's going to be plenty of action to tide you over. I will not be streaming Title Tuesday. I will be playing, but from the comfort of my own bedroom and getting some rest. So we will see you folks very soon. Round begins Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern. We'll see you then. Stay safe. Be well. We'll see you soon.